All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for yet another live reading of Solo Leveling's light novel. Today, we are going to be reading through chapters 51 through 60, and we continue after Jin just managed to recover within the penalty zone, and now he's prepared to face off against the massive onslaught of armored knights in this dungeon. Let's get started, shall we? Let's not beat around the bush here. I wonder, hey, Kitty! Hello, hello, hello. It's good to see you. I can't wait to read. I love reading to all of you. But before we continue, I just want to give a special thanks to all of you for all the support, all the contributions, everything you have ever done for me, even you just watching. I just want to say thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of your day with me as I read. It's the epic timing. It's absolutely perfect. But let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Because I still need to do the timestamps for the last session that we did. But let's begin. Chapter 51. The reason for searching for the mages was quite simple, if my thoughts are correct. And that was to confirm whether the supposition he made back in the penalty zone was correct or not. Meanwhile, the knights all began rushing violently towards him. Jin calmly jumped and stepped on the shoulder of the knight closest to him and leapt up into the air. That allowed him to take in the interior of the boss room in one go. Where are the mages? Found one. Not too far from him, he spotted a lone mage. As I thought, what he witnessed back then was right. Indeed, he didn't see wrong. Back then, when he was being squeezed tightly, see, right here. This is right here. I almost forgot to switch back to the scene so everyone who comments can see themselves. Sorry about that. What he witnessed back then was right. Indeed, he didn't see wrong. Back then, when he was being squeezed tight by the group of knights and only his arm could flail about helplessly, Jin spotted something through the narrow gaps he couldn't quite understand at the time. And that was a mage continuously chanting a spell. A mage busy chanting a spell. At a casual glance, it wouldn't be something out of place. However, Jin still felt a strong sense of discord from that. If that's the case, then how come he saw not one single spell flying at him? Every attack he received came from the knights. Mages continued to chant, yet not once did they complete their spells and display their might. No, there was that one time, back when one of them used something called Eyes of Detection and undid his stealth. And when that was happening, for some reason all the knights nearby stopped moving. At first he thought they only stopped because they had lost their target. However, while he was hunting down the giant centipedes in the penalty zone, he belatedly realized something quite important. Was it around the 8th centipede he killed? The level up message popped up and he clenched his fist tightly. Level up. His spent HP and MP were restored to full. After the short period of elation, a weird incongruency rushed in right afterwards. Oh, you don't see that many series using the word incongruency. Fancy. My level can rise this easily, yet why didn't I level up once in that place? The system said that his health wouldn't recover through level up, but crucially, it said nothing about him being unable to level up. Indeed, his level rose up by 5 on his way towards the boss room, too. However, only during the class change quests he didn't level up once, even though he endured for over 6 minutes and killed 100+ knights. Mages busy chanting, but not casting any spells. Knights that apparently didn't give out any experience points. When he took these actions of the two separate groups that puzzled him so much and combined them into one singular puzzle. A new possibility formed in Jin's head. It could be. It was possible that all of the knights there were fake. The reason why all those knights stopped moving when the mage used eyes of detection could be that. It wasn't because he had vanished, but because the mage had stopped casting. If my guess is correct, he needed to confirm it right now. Jin ignored the knights reaching out to grab him and ran towards the mage while using their shoulders and heads as his footholds. He sensed the mage panicking after spotting his approach, and its casting speed had increased. Suddenly, the knights no longer attacked him without a plan and tried to gather around the mage to protect it. With that, Jin was convinced now. Tap. He landed in front of the mage. Without a moment of hesitation, the dagger held in his right hand accurately pierced the mage's heart. Vital points targeting. Stab. The mage soundlessly turned into a wisp of black smoke and disappeared from the view. You defeated a mage. And at the same time, tumble! Hundreds of knights rushing in to attack Jin all collapsed at the same time. It was as if they were puppets with their strings cut. The knights collapsed on the floor were now, more or less, empty suits of armor. This was my answer, Jin cried out inwardly in elation. He had to go through several near-death situations just to get to this conclusion. Knights were nothing to worry about. No, it was the mages that controlled these knights. The real goal was to kill them instead. The first target my Night Killer killed was a mage. Jin couldn't help but chuckle as he looked down at the empty robe discarded on the floor. He had that much leeway now. Of course, he couldn't continue to stand around doing nothing forever. After all, his quest hadn't ended yet. Rumble. The ground shook again. Jin turned around and saw that the knights had him surrounded from almost all sides with no gaps to speak of. Meaning there were other mages controlling these batches of knights hidden somewhere. Knights pounced on him. Jin's right hand moved so fast that naked eyes couldn't even see its shape. Slice! The knights standing in front of him all got cut in half. Jin's eyes opened real wide after witnessing that. Wow. It was worth investing 2.8 million gold on this dagger. The blade of his Night Killer pierced and sliced open the knight's armor as if they were made of paper. It didn't seem that the saw-like blade was the only reason for this. Just as the item description, dagger designed for use against knights, said, he could sense a strong magic-like power emanating from this Night Killer. I wish I could see your comment, but this little heart is just blocking me. Hold on, let me see if I can see, so I can see. I'm on TV now? Oh, look at me. Hey, Ma, I'm on TV. I'm getting silly now. My apologies. Just as the item description dagger designed for use against knights said, he could sense a strong magic-like power emanating from this Night Killer. The weapon from the store is actually pretty good, isn't it? There was a slight deviation from the accepted norm here. Normally, most people would think of weapons sold in stores as something one would use in a pinch when there was no better alternative. I shouldn't be dismissing gold from now, huh? At a bare minimum, this dagger seemed a lot more useful than weapons designed for a hunter. He even thought that, if he sold weapons from the store to other hunters, he would become rich in no time at all. Well, he didn't see any restrictions on the weapon descriptions that he couldn't give one to someone else, which was different from consumable-type items. Concentrate, man. Concentrate. Now wasn't the time to get distracted. Knights were still tirelessly rushing at him. Swish, slice! Jin dodged this way and that while cutting them down. However, this will go on forever. When he shifted his gaze away just for a brief moment, far more knights than he had cut down appeared out of seemingly nowhere to fill the gap. Slice! One more knight lost its head. I gotta find the mages. Jin utilized the shoulders of the headless knights and leapt up before the creature collapsed on the floor. Stealth! Jin's form blurred in an instant. Of course, he wasn't trying to hide via stealth. What he was aiming for was...
The mage has used skill, Eyes of Detection.
The ear-piercing mechanical beeps rang out from several directions. Jin ran on top of the knights and quickly confirmed the positions of the eye-like symbols. There are a total of 5 mages. Jin targeted the closest mage to him. The mage hurriedly gathered knights around it at the moment Jin turned to stare at it, but... The poison fang of Kasuga flew out of his left hand in a straight line and stabbed accurately in the middle of the mage's forehead. Stab!
You've acquired skill Dagger Throw. You defeated the mage.
Tumble. Once more, hundreds of knights tumbled to the ground. 4 more left. Jin stepped on the knights' heads and moved towards his next target. Meanwhile, he sneaked a glance towards the poison fang of Kasuga he hadn't recovered yet. It was time to use his new skill. Ruler's Reach! Jin extended his left hand towards the dagger, and as if a magnet was pulling it in, the weapon flew back in. Yes! Jin snatched the dagger off the air. Now that he didn't have to personally retrieve his dagger, he could take the most efficient route to his target. In the next second, he arrived before the next mage, and... Even before the knights could try anything, he cut the bastard up in half.
You defeated the mage.
More knights collapsed again. With that, not even half of the original number of knights remained. The initiative was clearly with him now. Jin's glare became harsher. There are 3 left. Perhaps sensing the threat, the remaining mages all gathered in one spot. Genius idea right there. It wasn't only them either. The knights they controlled also gathered around them. And then the mages all chanted a certain spell together. Their ominous and creepy voices reverberated throughout the boss room, and soon they finished their spell. Crack! Crink! The knights guarding the mages were suddenly pulled into one lump and got compressed as if they were thrown into an industrial crusher. And then, they were reborn as one huge metal golem which began glaring at Jin right away. Wow, this is no joke, huh? Jin leaked out a gasp of pure admiration after sensing the overwhelming pressure emitted from this giant monster. However, he wasn't scared by its appearance at all. Perhaps because he had encountered several life-or-death situations already, he was feeling expectant rather than nervous. Thud! 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 Whenever the large golem took steps, the ground shook. What a fearsome presence it possessed. Jin ducked lower and dodged the golem's fist. Kaboom! The stone pillar behind Jin shattered into pieces after its metallic fist grazed it. Well, that is pretty serious power. Jin grinned slyly. If he hadn't yet figured out what was going on here, he would have been racking his brain trying to figure out how to deal with this monster. However, there was no need for him to worry about that now. No need at all. Just as the golem locked its hands together and raised them high to smash down, Jin didn't back away, but used his skill dashed, past tense, me and grammar today, but used his skill dash and pounced forward, and then he slid on the floor. In the blink of an eye, he had slid in between the legs of the golem and shot right past it. While the lumbering golem was hastily turning around, Jin had already arrived before the 3 completely defenseless mages, still busy chanting their spell. The shoulders of the panicking mages grandly shuddered. Checkmate. A smile of contentment formed on Jin's face. The old saying went something like, by being together, you'd be safe, and that separating from one another would mean death. Too bad for them, that was not the case this time around. It was far easier to kill them off because they had gathered in one place. See? What did I tell you? Jin freely swung his daggers about and,
You defeated the mage. You defeated the mage. You defeated the mage.
the remaining 3 mages also became smoke and joined their already departed comrades. And the golem that was trying to hurriedly grab Jin shattered into pieces of armor and scattered all over the place. Jin didn't let his guard down, however. Is this the end? Or is there something more? He remained alert and ready just in case something else might happen. But then, the familiar beep went off in his head.
Dring!
Jin swallowed his saliva. It hasn't even been 30 minutes. It hasn't even been 30 minutes. All right, the counter's gone up to 1 now. Jin swallowed his saliva. Perhaps to laugh at his unnecessary worries, the system announced the end of the quest instead.
The class change quest has been concluded as all monsters inside the examination chamber have been defeated. Your class will be determined shortly. Depending on the amount of advancement points accumulated, it will be possible to change your class to a high-ranking one.
Only now could Jin spit out a sigh of relief. What a difficult battle this had been. If he remained fixated on the immediate return stone, he'd never have figured out how to counter the class change quest monsters. Yeah, I probably had been thinking about escaping all the time. He got unlucky, or perhaps got really lucky instead, and lost the immediate return stone, and that forced him to focus solely on surviving this battle. The end result was an unbridled success. And now it was time to receive his rewards. Jin's gaze drifted towards the timer. 4 hours, 29 minutes, and 16 seconds. The numbers on the timer had stopped moving. He had endured for almost 4.5 hours. And that wasn't all. In a quest that could be cleared simply by enduring the combined assault of the countless enemies for a while, he actually managed to kill them all. Just from wondering about how many points he got to accumulate and what kind of a class he'd earn from that, his heart began trembling in anticipation.
The suitable class will be bestowed upon the player after your past actions have been thoroughly analyzed.
Yup, that sounds good. If his past actions were used as the basis for the selection of his class, then the odds of him ending up with something weird and struggling in the future would be close to 0 now. It was probably the most welcoming thing he'd heard in a while.
The places where the player stands are dyed with the hidden breaths of an assassin. Corpses fill the paths the player has walked past, and the scent of blood is thick and strong.
He thought that this description was a bit too heartless and cold, but after looking back, he couldn't come up with anything to rebut those words. I only did those in order to raise my level, though. After entering an instant dungeon, he kept hunting monsters down until his level would not rise anymore. And while inside a regular dungeon, he made sure to find every single hidden monster there and slew them all too. Also, although it wasn't his intention, he ended up fighting other hunters a couple of times too. Assassin, corpses, and the scent of blood. No matter how you look at it. Just as he suspected from the beginning, it seemed that his class would be set at Assassin now.
Also, the player thirsts for power, never relies on his comrades, and paves the new path for himself with his own strength.
Nod. Jin nodded his head in agreement with the system's assessment. Well, it's not like I had any trustworthy comrades to begin with. However, he couldn't understand why those points were being addressed during the selection of his class. The system's explanation continued on.
Your thirst for strong power is increased enough to summon the spirits of the departed and the army of the deceased that unquestioningly.
See? Grammar.
The grammar. Your thirst for strong power is intense enough to summon the spirits of the departed, and the army of the deceased that unquestioningly follows all of your commands will pave the road only for you, without anyone's aid.
The army of the deceased? Only now had Jin realized something had gone awry here. Too bad, though. No, wait! Even before he had any chance to raise his objections, the system read off the result of the selection in its usual dry and humorless voice.
Your class has been set as Necromancer.
What the heck? And that is the end of Chapter 51. Haven't missed it? I just finished Chapter 51, but you still made it in a decent amount of time. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Onwards to Chapter 52. What was the meaning of this sudden slap to the back of his head? Everything was going well, so why did Necromancer pop out instead of the expected assassin? Wait, this is solo leveling Ragnarok or normal? This is solo leveling. It would not be purple if it was Ragnarok, which I make blue. And it would say Ragnarok as well. What was the meaning of this sudden slap to the back of his head? Everything was going well, so why did Necromancer pop out instead of the expected assassin? Jin dazedly stared at the message. He even rubbed his eyes several times, but nothing changed.
Your class has been set as Necromancer.
The message still floated up there, unchanging. He couldn't believe it at first. Then he became really angry next. I've never even touched the intelligence stat, so what the heck? Just how did he end up with a rare class not even found among countless mage-type hunters in the world? From the moment Jin awoke as an E-rank hunter, he was always a close-quarters fighter. With the exception of the steel longsword, he always used daggers, and the skills he got until now were perfectly suited for the role of an assassin. That was why he hadn't even thought of the possibility that his class would end up belonging to a different type altogether. It was a magic type, no less. No, more than that, a necromancer. His knowledge of different classes came from video games. But even then, he knew enough about what being a necromancer entailed. A gloomy-looking mage and an army of undead following that dude. No matter how much he thought about it, that image just didn't correlate to him whatsoever. Jin frowned deeply and shook his head. Let's calm down first. Even if his thoughts were complicated, his responses should be calm. Being calm and cool-headed were Jin's ultimate weapons. He controlled his rage and regained his cool head soon afterwards. Hang on. Isn't this denial, then rage? He suddenly felt like he was acting like a patient who just heard the diagnosis of terminal illness and was going through the so-called 5 stages of grief. Rage. Then it's supposed to be negotiation, is it? Or was it compromise? Of course, there was no way he'd be allowed to negotiate or come to a compromise with the system. If he were to think about the advantages of being a necromancer, then, just as the system alluded to, he could create his own army. About that much? Well, the problem here is that army will consist of skeletons and rotting corpses. If he walked around with such an army, the whole world would be up in arms in no time. Hunters were already the objects of aspiration and fear, yet he was being asked to become a hunter who could lead around an army of the departed. Never mind the question of this class being suitable to him or not. He wasn't even confident of handling the fallout from that.
Tring! Will you accept this class?
The system demanded his answer. What a relief that was. I can still say yes or no. Jin spat out a sigh. If the class wasn't forced down his throat, then that meant there was another opportunity for him. If he still had another shot, then there was no reason to sweat so much right now. Jin gladly refused the suggestion. No way. When he did that, the message asked him again.
The necromancer is a hidden class. Will you still refuse?
Although it was asking the same thing for the second time, he found himself unable to quickly answer back. He was now hesitating. A hidden class, is it? That term might sound like something straight out of a video game, but still there were hunters with rare and strange abilities even in reality. Such as hunters who can create shields or buff others, or even... The master of White Tiger Guild can apparently transform into a monster too, according to the rumors. All those hunters with rare and strange abilities were now enjoying a great deal of special treatment after being scouted by the biggest guilds out there. Could this hidden class thing be the same thing as the special abilities those hunters possess? If that were the case, this could be an opportunity instead. Suddenly, such a thought popped into his head. The system did say something about this just now. I thirst for power, and that's why it's recommending the class of Necromancer to me. In other words, the class of Necromancer had the potential to be truly powerful. When considering the fact that most of the hunters with rare skills happen to belong to support type, this could be seen as quite an encouraging thing for him indeed. A hunter with a rare skill that could directly enter any battle. His heart began beating just a little bit faster just from thinking about that. If I could only get to experience the class of Necromancer just for a bit, I wouldn't even need to weigh my options this much. However, would anything in this world be that easy? There was no way the matters of this world would revolve according to his wishes, and worse still, he had never heard of anyone possessing an ability similar to that of a necromancer. The thing was, one wouldn't be able to find a mage who commanded its own army to begin with. Just as his thoughts ended there. Oh, Jin took a sweeping look at all the broken remnants of the knights strewn about this place. Those mages. One could say that those mages in the class change quest were using roughly the same ability as a necromancer. These knights were their army, in other words. For sure. It was certainly very difficult to fight all those knights who attacked him with complete disregard for their own lives. If he failed to figure out how to fight them until the end, or if the mages possessed very high close quarters combat abilities, then... The one lying on the floor right now would be me instead of these scrap metal bits. Jin stopped looking at the knights and raised his head. A certain look of determination flashed by in his eyes. I already possessed the close quarters combat ability, meaning he was different from those mages. What if there was a mage possessing excellent hand-to-hand combat skills who also happened to command an army? Wouldn't that be the worst of all worst possible nightmares for his enemies? What if... Something he could only think about but couldn't do. Wouldn't it be possible for him to enter a dungeon rated B or higher alone and clear it now? Jin silently swallowed his saliva. That's two. That is literally two. What in the world? What in the world? If he were allowed to continue raising his stat values after becoming a necromancer, then obviously the army under his command would also grow even more powerful than before. He couldn't even begin to imagine the effect of that. It'll no longer be only me leveling up. His own army would be leveling up too. Wait, could this be? Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. Jin raised his head and looked at the floating message. It was still patiently waiting for his decision.
The necromancer is a hidden class. Will you still refuse?
Unlike how it was usually, the system wasn't urging him on. Jin couldn't help question its motives in his mind. Is this what you wanted from me? Of course, no replies came to him. After a lengthy deliberation, Jin made up his mind. If it was giving him power, then he'd accept it with open arms. He no longer hesitated.
Will you accept this class?
I will. As if it was waiting, the system immediately displayed the following messages.
Your class has been set. You will now be given the opportunity to change to a higher ranked version of this class through the amount of advancement points accumulated. Calculations have begun. Tallying up your advancement points.
While that was going on, Jin unwrapped the bandages from his right hand. He had been holding the dagger so tightly that his palm had swollen up rather painfully. Well, I'm gonna get blisters now. He lightly clicked his tongue. Such a wound would have been taken care of with a drop from the healing potion, but not being able to use one was proving to be rather inconvenient in various ways. He finished unwrapping the bandages and was about to store the night killer back in his inventory when he heard yet another mechanical beep. Jin reflexively raised his head.
You've exceeded the expected time limit. Bonus points will be granted.
Bonus points, it said. But that was rather obvious, wasn't it? Not sure how long was the expected time, but, well, I did endure for quite a long time, didn't I? He began smirking in satisfaction. Then, all of a sudden, several messages inundated his vision. Oh, inundated. Someone's fancy with their words again.
You did not use immediate return stone. Bonus points will be granted. Your remaining HP is over 50%. Bonus points will be granted. You eliminated all the enemies. Bonus points will be granted. Total advancement points tally has exceeded the class-specific point limit. According to the contract, you will be given a special reward.
What's this? His ears hurt from all the beepings, but Jin's focus was fixed elsewhere and didn't care anymore. As a matter of fact, he couldn't even hear those beeps now. A special reward? Those words jumped right up at him. A reward. Not only that, it was special too. Jin stopped trying to store the night killer in his inventory and concentrated on the message. His stares were now firmly fixed on it. Soon, follow-up messages popped up.
Your class has been upgraded from Necromancer to Shadow Sovereign. You have acquired class-specific skills. You have acquired bonus stats. You have acquired the title, the one who overcame the adversity.
Shadow Sovereign? Or Shadow Monarch if you are more used to the comics term for it. You know what? I'll stick with saying Shadow Monarch from this point on.
You have acquired the title, the one who overcame the adversity.
Shadow Monarch. Hearing that strange term, Jin hurriedly summoned his status window. Name, Sung Jinu. Level, 51. Class, Shadow Monarch. Indeed, there was a new term added to his class column. It's not a necromancer anymore? The system definitely said that he'd be able to get a higher-ranked version of his class according to the amount of advancement points he had earned. And also, it mentioned that the point tally had exceeded the limits of the class itself, too. The end result from all that was this Shadow Monarch. So is this the special reward the system was talking about? The thing was, though, Jin couldn't continue on with what he wanted to say. Right in front of his disbelieving eyes, a truly bizarre and hard-to-explain phenomenon began unfolding. Behind the hologram-like messages, unknown black smoke was slowly and eerily leaking out from the night strewn about on the floor like scrap metal. No such thing happened prior to him getting his class. These bits of scrap metal were nothing more than ownerless junk only until a minute ago. However, Jin closed the status window and swept his gaze around the interior of the boss room once. It wasn't just one or two now. That black smoke was rising from every single knight on the ground.
It is possible to perform shadow extraction on the selected target.
Whenever his eyes landed on targets with black smoke oozing out from them, the words from hard to fathom meanings possible to perform extraction popped up into his view. Shadow extraction. He couldn't understand why, but to Jin, those rising smokes looked like they were writhing in pain. As a matter of fact, it felt like they were reaching out to him, begging him to save them. Would it be strange if he said that? He could hear their screams? But he was sure of one thing. He was sure of him being able to free them from their pain. Shadow extraction.
Please set the command phrase to activate the shadow extraction skill.
I gotta set a separate activation phrase for this skill? Jin pondered for a bit before muttering out almost instinctively, and, from going this point on, what it says in the webcomic and also the anime as well, I'm going to use those words as said, regardless of what the light novel actually says. Arise. When he did, thick, heavy moans resounded out from somewhere, and at the same time, the shadows of the fallen knights began wiggling as if they were still alive. Jin scanned his surroundings once more. All the shadows found near him were beginning to move. Soon enough, a black hand rose up from one of the shadows. It pressed down on the ground hard, and slowly the arm attached to it rose up. Oh my god! Jin's eyes opened wider and wider. Those things were people. No, soldiers possessing the outer appearance of a person. Soldiers kitted out head to toe in jet black armor climbed out of the shadows. Climbed out of the shadows one by one. This is my new skill? By the time Jin recovered his wits, there were a couple dozen soldiers standing by his side, waiting.
Shadow extraction was a success.
Tens of soldiers were now surrounding him. What the heck is this? Jin approached the nearest soldier. The first thing he did was to touch it. When he placed his hand on it, he felt something metallic. As it turned out, the metal-looking armors weren't just for show. Indeed, these guys were all outfitted in real black armor and real weapons. At first glance, they look like people, don't they? However, they weren't people. He couldn't sense any signs of life from them. They didn't breathe, and there were no heartbeats he could hear. On top of this, Jin swallowed down his shocked gasp. He sneaked a glance inside the helmet through the eye holes and found nothing but pure darkness in there. Jin slowly took several steps back after feeling like he was being sucked in. These things came out from the shadows? He immediately checked his skill window. Just as the system informed him, new class-specific skills could be found there now. Class-specific skills. Active skills. He checked the details of the first skill. Skill, Shadow Extraction Level 1. Class-specific skill. Required mana to activate, none. Creates a shadow soldier by extracting mana from the recently deceased life form. The odds of extraction failure will rise higher depending on the target's original stat values, as well as the length of time since its death. Number of shadows that can be extracted, 30 out of 30. Only after reading the explanation on the skill did he realize the identity of these black soldiers. They're all undead. Shadow soldiers. Monsters pulled out from the shadows of the dead. Jin swallowed down his saliva. That is 3 now. If these things are really my soldiers, then. Jin raised his arm and pointed to his right, and the soldiers all uniformly shifted their bodies to the right. The end of his hand slowly moved to his front, and the soldiers too followed after his hand and slowly faced their front. Jin stood in the middle of them. He did his best to calm his pounding heart and lowered his hand. And at the same time, every single soldier knelt down before him. They were moving according to his will. Jin let out a soft gasp of admiration as the ends of his lips arched up. Isn't this cool? And that is the end of chapter 52. Onwards to chapter 53. Oops! A thought flashed by in Jin's head. Well, chapter 53, just in case because this actually helps me when I'm making the chapter splits when I do the timestamps. Chapter 53. Oops! A thought flashed by in Jin's head. I shouldn't be wasting time like this. He had witnessed the power of his new skill. He could now turn the defeated monsters into his soldiers. If that was the case, wasn't there a monster nearby that he just had to turn into his lackey right away? Jin climbed up the pile of monsters that once used to be the giant iron golem and stood on top of it. By being so high, he could take in the entirety of the boss room. Jin searched around as his glare became sharper. Found it. Confirming the direction, Jin immediately ran over there. Perhaps he was feeling really psyched. He arrived there in the blink of an eye, even though he didn't use the dash skill. Jin looked at the corpse of the monster that he was planning to extract the shadow from, and swallowed dry saliva. That's four. That's 4 in less than 3 minutes. That is 4 in less than 3 minutes. What in the world is with this particular phrase being so prevalent in this series? Sorry, rant over. The creature remained in the exact same spot where he had killed it. Igris the Crimson, or Igris the Red, if you want to. The sight of the red-armored, headless knight half buried in the thick, sturdy wall told how desperate his situation was back then. Jin stood before Igris. It might have been a fearsome enemy that threatened to kill him only a few hours ago, but now it was probably the best ingredient he could find. Fortunately enough, he saw the black smoke slowly oozing out from Igris, just like how it was with other fallen knights.
It is possible to perform shadow extraction on the selected target.
Jin's expression brightened. Nice. He already knew the drill. Jin took a short but deep breath and spoke out the command phrase. Arise. He spoke the activation phrase for the skill shadow extraction. However, the skill didn't activate. Jin tilted his head this way and that way, and was about to say the command phrase again. But then, following a tring, several warning messages popped up.
You have exceeded the number of shadows that can be extracted. If you wish to perform shadow extraction, you must return a portion or all of your soldiers back to the world of nothingness via extraction cancellation. Once returned to nothingness, the shadow soldiers can't be summoned back.
Oh yeah, there was something like that, wasn't there? At the end of the skill's explanation, there was something he should have taken note of.
Number of shadows that can be extracted. 30 out of 30.
The maximum number of extractions he could perform was 30, which meant the number of his soldiers was currently 30. Jin looked behind him. The shadow soldiers had followed him even before he had noticed it, and they were standing in attention. When did they? Perhaps fitting their title of shadow soldiers, they seemed to move around without making a single sound. That's scary. Whatever the case might have been, if he wanted to extract Igris's shadow, he had to get rid of one of these guys, just as the system alluded to. But it had only been a short while, yet when he thought about them being his soldiers, he kind of didn't want to dismiss any of them. Did he get attached to them already? With a rueful, unwilling expression, Jin slowly scanned each and every one of his shadow soldiers. As his eyes swept past the soldiers, their names and levels appeared before his view.
Shadow Infantryman, Level 1, Regular Grade. Shadow Infantryman, Level 1, Regular Grade.
Everyone possessed the same name and level. Oh well, their origins were exactly the same, so... But then he discovered 3 somewhat different colored soldiers right at the back of the infantrymen.
Are those?
Unlike the regular infantrymen, these guys were wearing robes.
Shadow Magic Soldier Level 1. Elite Grade.
Oh. He quickly figured out what they were. The 3 mages that were controlling the Iron Golem must have been revived as undead as well when he gave out his Arise command just now.
So, 27 infantrymen and 3 mages, huh?
This was why being rare was a good thing. He excluded the low-numbered mages and selected the closest infantrymen from him to cancel the extraction. And he was really sorry about this.
Extraction cancellation.
The soldier turned into black smoke and scattered in the air. Not even a trace remained of it. Jin gazed at the spot of the disappeared soldier for a little while with an apologetic expression, before shifting his attention back to Igris. His preparation was complete. He even had to sacrifice one of his wonderful soldiers just so he could turn Igris into a shadow, so he simply had to see some results here. Time to act while the sun still shone. Jin tried the extraction right away.
Arise.
When he did that, the shadow cast beneath Igris began to wiggle as if it came to life. It was the same reaction as when he extracted the shadows from the knights just now.
Okay, good.
Jin clenched his fist tightly. He had a good feeling about this.
Shadow extraction has commenced. Attempting to extract.
What would Igris look like after its extraction? Jin's hands became slick with the sweat of anticipation. Unfortunately,
Ding!
a mechanical beep akin to a metal plate breaking in half rang inside his head.
Shadow extraction has failed.
What?
2 more attempts remaining.
Hearing that he still had more chances remaining, Jin spat out a long sigh of relief.
Hang on. Now that I think about it.
The skill's explanation definitely said that the odds of extraction failure would rise up depending on the target's stat values. But having experienced it personally, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. It felt like he got slapped in the back of his head. This taste of his first failure. Not only that, there was a restriction on the number of attempts he could try.
So, I have 2 more attempts remaining.
If he failed in both attempts, then did that mean Igris' shadow would disappear into that nothingness just as the sacrificed infantrymen did? Imagining the worst possible scenario, he felt dizzy for a second. Jin quickly shook his head to clear his mind.
Let's stop thinking negatively about this.
Indeed, only positive thoughts. You hear that, everybody? Stop thinking negatively about stuff. Only positive thoughts. Did someone say that if you believed earnestly enough, the universe would find a way to help you out? While stewing inside anxiety and anticipation, Jin attempted the extraction for the second time.
Arise.
Too bad. His expectation was shot down grandly once more.
Ding! Shadow extraction has failed. 1 more attempt remaining.
This guy gave him so much trouble while it was still alive, and even in death it was managing to give him some serious headaches. And here he was, hoping against hope. Now that he had failed twice in a row, his vision seemed to have blurred, everything looking a bit bleak. Jin deeply inhaled and exhaled his breath. There were no more attempts remaining after this. He had only 1 more shot left. Jin closed his eyes and reorganized his thoughts.
Well, it could be nothing more than percentages and odds, but
it was possible that his desire to possess Igris' shadow wasn't earnest or strong enough. Jin slowly reopened his eyes. He sensed the black smoke rising up from Igris reaching out to him, pleading with him to save it. Jin became a lot more serious than before, and he reached out with his right hand as if to grab that pleading hand of the smoke.
Arise.
He didn't do it deliberately. He himself didn't quite realize it then, but Jin's voice sounded much heavier and graver than ever before, and it reverberated throughout the boss room. And it was then. Blah! A deep scream could be heard coming from somewhere, and chilling, eerie winds swept by the boss's room. Isn't this it? Jin's expression brightened. He remembered encountering a similar situation like this before, back when his infantrymen first popped out from the shadows. Just as he hoped for, as the lengthy scream came to an end, a long black hand emerged from the shadow. And when that hand pressed down on the ground, a new message popped up in his view.
Shadow extraction was a success.
Jin let out a cry of happiness. Yes! He tightly clenched his fist. The taste of success was so much sweeter since he had to go through 2 failures to get here. However, the good news didn't end there.
The monarch's voice had awakened the departed fighting spirit. You have succeeded in strengthening your shadow soldier. The shadow's level will now start at 7.
I succeeded in strengthening? What? A shadow's starting level could be higher than 1? Jin's eyes widened once more. Just as the message said, the Black Knight emerging from the shadow carried level 7 in its status. Jin spat out a short gasp. The newly emerged shadow looked exactly as it was in his memories. The mane attached to the helm, the highly fashionable armor wrapped around its entire body, that noble, dignified cape. The only difference being that the blood-like armor now sported a pitch-black color instead. Everything else was exactly the same. He had probably believed it if someone told him that Igris had returned to life just now. However, the newly reborn Igris didn't display a single hint of animosity towards him. No, it just stood there quietly, waiting for Jin to give it a new order. Jin's heart began pounding in excitement as he stared at Igris, and there was a big grin etched on his face. Even though his heart was palpitating, you don't see that many stories using palpitating as a thing in there, I'm just saying. Even though his heart was palpitating, there was something he was curious about. Jin's gaze shifted just above Igris's head. Why doesn't this guy have a name?
Unknown, level 7. Night grade.
For some strange reason, there was a couple of question marks instead of its name. And its grade is also different. He understood that its level was high because of that strengthening thing, but still, this guy exhibited quite a few differences from the regular infantrymen. Mihai! Yet another member has shown up. It's good to see you, Mihai. He understood that its level was high enough because of that strengthening thing. But still, this guy exhibited quite a few differences from the regular infantrymen. Perhaps it read Jin's mind, because the system sent him a new message with excellent timing. Ta-ding! Just like Mihai with excellent timing.
You can bestow a name to a night grade soldier. The bestowed name will be maintained until the shadow soldier is dismissed. Please set the soldier's name.
A name, is it? At first, he was at a loss with this unexpected demand, but soon enough he recalled that this guy already had a name, and a smile crept up on his face. There should be no problem calling it by its original name, no?
Please set the soldier's name.
The message... What is the count for today's swallowing saliva? Currently at 4. We are currently at 4.
Please set the soldier's name.
The message blinked as if to urge him on with the naming already. Jin opened his mouth. Igris No, hang on a minute. When the system asked him to set the name, it meant that he'd have to use that name to call this guy from here onwards. So didn't that also mean that he'd have to call it Igris the blah blah all the time from now on? Just thinking about that gave him a nasty case of goosebumps. That's way too cringy. In the end, he decided to shorten the name somewhat. Igris.
Will you set the name as Igris?
That's right. As soon as Jin spoke, the question marks on the guy's head disappeared and the name Igris appeared there. Sorry, I'm looking at you guys in chat. Yeah, it's good to see you all here. It's good to see you. As soon as Jin spoke, the question marks on the guy's head disappeared and the name Igris appeared there.
Igris, level 7, night grade.
All he did was to simply give it its original name, yet Jin still felt like he had accomplished something pretty amazing. He was filled with contentment, knowing that this guy was his loyal soldier now. My own loyal soldier, eh? Jin took a look behind him. 29 shadow soldiers were still there, waiting for his orders. For now, the number was too small. Only 30, huh? Either this was because the skill of shadow extraction was too low, or because his intelligence stat hadn't been raised high enough. But he was sure of one thing, and that was the number of his soldiers would gradually swell up. Yup, I really have myself a new army. Not only that, they weren't some skeletons and corpses, but an army of shadows. Now, there was only one problem remaining, and that was how'd he walk around with these guys? Now that gave him a bit of a headache. Me, flubbing words. My apologies. Now that gave him a bit of a headache. Doesn't matter skeletons or shadows. It'd be way too eye-catching if these guys freely walked around in the streets. Would that be all? This skill was already way past regular people accepting it as one of the many awakened abilities a hunter could possess. Either he'd be under the constant surveillance, or worse, someone might even demand him to dismiss the summoning too. Wu Jinchul, the section chief of the monitoring division, the Hunters Association. Really struggling today? Oh no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I had me some wonderful breakfast. It's just me trying. It's my eyes want to read ahead, but I'd say my eyes are trying to read in advance, and I was just flubbing my lines there. We're good. Wu Jinchul, the section chief of the monitoring division, the Korean Hunters Association. Thinking about how stuffy-looking guys like that man would come around every day and annoy him to no end in the future, Jin felt like he'd die from frustration already. That was precisely why the next skill existed, probably. Skills. Jin summoned his skill window. Class-specific skills. Active skills. The skill he only checked its name and nothing else until now. The Shadow Storage. That name alone made him think that this skill would help him out in these sort of situations. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 53. Onwards to Chapter 54. I want to say we are definitely making some good time. I want to say about a good hour has already passed, and we're getting closer to the halfway mark. So I'd say we're doing pretty good. Chapter 54. Skill. Shadow Storage Level 1. Class-specific skill. Mana required to activate, none. Stores the shadow soldiers inside the summoner's shadow. The stored soldiers can be summoned back into the open or absorbed back at any time the summoner chooses to. Number of stored shadow soldiers, 0 out of 20. I knew it. Jin nodded his head. Since the skill's name had the word storage in it, he expected it to have something to do with storing away the soldiers. Unfortunately, there was a part that proved to be completely out of his expectations. How come the number is? The number of soldiers he could store was noticeably lower than those he could create. Indeed, he could create 30, yet he could only store 20, meaning he had to unsummon 10 more. Now this sucks. Just which finger out of the 10 in your hands wouldn't hurt when you bit them? When you bite them. Just discarding one made his heart bleed. But now he had to discard 10? Hmm. Jin stared at the soldiers with a rather lonely expression on his face. Obviously, the night grade Icarus was excluded. 3 magic soldiers were also excluded, since they would be harder to replace and also fewer in number. At the end of the day, the most disposable remained the infantrymen. Last time, he chose the one closest to him, so this time he chose the 10 that were furthest away from him and canceled their summoning. Sorry. He prayed for their happiness in the afterlife, and then, poof! In the blink of an eye, those 10 soldiers turned into dust and disappeared from this world. Thankfully, his heart didn't ache as badly as the first time. Did the wise old they mean this by saying that the first time was always the hardest? In any case, Jin took one last look at the soldiers and activated the shadow storage. When he did that, all the shadow soldiers, including Icarus, all returned to being shadows, as if they were melting like an ice cube caught in extremely high temperatures. Those shadows all gathered beneath his feet next. So this is that absorbing into my shadow thing. It was as the label said, the shadows were absorbed into Jin's shadow. It happened so quickly, too. All of his soldiers disappeared without a trace in less than a blink of an eye. I'm the one who did it, yet I can hardly believe it myself. Utterly amazed now, Jin continued to stare at his own shadow. It was then, as if it was waiting for this, the mechanical beeps resounded out one after the other.
Ta-ding! You have experimented with all the class-specific skills. Class change has now been concluded. Exit gate will now be generated.
So it's finally over, huh? What a long and difficult road this was. Jin scanned the interior of the boss room, his eyes full of reminiscence. The evidence of fierce battle could be seen everywhere. Broken down knights, walls with cracks on them, a shattered stone pillar, and the iron golem responsible for shattering that very pillar, now nothing more than a scrap heap. However, as a compensation for his struggles, he was now walking away with so much profit. A new class and skills, several other important things besides those, as well as powerful new allies. A wide grin naturally floated up on his lips. Without hesitation, Jin turned around. The gate connecting to the outside world was quietly waiting for him, as if to congratulate him on his successful adventure. When he took a step outside, the surroundings changed in an instant, and he was back in the empty lot of the local mountainside. It was none other than the very spot where he initiated his class change quest. The time indicated was 5 in the morning. It was already time for the sunrise. Oops! Jin clicked his tongue while confirming the time. If I knew the quest would end up taking this long to complete, I should have left a message for Jenna earlier. What a relief, then, that he'd often come home late from raids taking longer than expected, back when he was working for the association. Jin took one last look behind him, but the gate he exited from just now was already gone without a trace. Huh. When looking at the spot where the gate used to be, it kind of felt like he had woken up from a long dream. Was it a dream? No, that wasn't possible. Jin scanned his immediate vicinity. The soldiers decked out in pitch-black armors. As soon as he thought about them, they rapidly emerged from his shadow. At first, he simply thought of them as nothing more than monsters. The shadow soldiers. The monsters that stepped out from the shadows of the dead after they were summoned by him. However, if these things were monsters, then just what should the guy who could freely control them be called now? Jin smirked softly. Well, it doesn't matter one way or the other. Jin stored the soldiers back into his shadow. He noticed that his steps going down the mountain were rather light and cheery. Jin slept until late in the day, but that couldn't be helped. By the time he got back home, the sun had risen up pretty high already.
Ring, 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 ring.
Jin's sweet slumber was eventually disrupted by the ringtone from his smartphone. His hand fumbled around near his head and with some difficulty located his phone. Hello. His voice cracked up from his dry throat. Jenna's shocked voice came out from the speaker, so he asked her back. Okay, what time is it now?
What?
What? He glanced at the time on the phone screen with half-open eyes. She was telling the truth. You know, I've always thought of this. I wonder how much the shadows laughed at Jin and his antics. Quite often, but not to where he could hear. You know, laughing at your boss who's doing something incredibly stupid, or something happens to him and you kind of laugh to yourself, but you don't let them know. Kind of, I would imagine it would happen quite a few times. Okay, what time is it now? What? He glanced at the time on the phone screen with half-open eyes. She was telling the truth. Her voice sounded anxious. Jin finally raised his upper body, albeit very slowly. What time should I get there at the latest? I won't be late, so don't worry. Jinna switched on her charm attack and ended the call soon afterwards. Scratch, scratch. Little sound effects of scratching and scratching. Jin scratched his unkempt hair for a bit before slowly getting up from the bed. He didn't have a lot of time left if he were to get ready. Well, I'm going to meet my sister's homeroom teacher after all. Not only that, this teacher would be in charge of her third year in high school, one of the most important periods in a person's life. So I can't just wear whatever now, right? He opened the closet and rummaged through the clothes in there. However, he was greeted by a rather dusty, moldy odor. Bruh, your closet should never smell dusty or moldy. You should be cleaning up in there, bruh. Can't stand dirt. Of course, it was not something pleasant to smell at all. Jin's frown deepened. He continued to dig around, but all he could find was an old business suit he once wore during his own high school graduation. Will it even fit me now? He was hoping against hoping, but, well, as expected, the clothes were too snug and he couldn't even move his arms. Yup, my body has grown much bigger lately. Putting on the old clothes painted a stark picture of his current reality. The suit was nearly bursting at the seams, literally. What should he do now? Jin was pondering what to do, but then he spotted the bank book that Jinno gave him. I see the whole name out, and I'm just like, you know what? Just say Jinno. But then he spotted the bank book that Jinno gave him a day before. It was for the amount filled with the proceeds from selling off all those magic crystals. He alternated his gaze between his nearly torn clothes and the bank book with its new stamp still sealed together, before a smile formed on his lips. Been a while, but should I go on a shopping spree then? Before that, though, there was this small thing he had to confirm first. Oh, this is what she was talking about without spoiling? Ah, laughing at him literally bursting out of his own old clothes because he was simply too muscular. Been a while, but should I go on a shopping spree then? Before that, though, there was this small thing he had to confirm first. Actually, it was a bit bigger than that, but still. Jin took off the old business suit, and while sitting on the edge of the bed, summoned his status window. Stats. With that, a long board full of letters and numbers appeared before his eyes.
Ring! Name, Sung Jinu. Level, 51. Class, Shadow Monarch. Title, Slaughter of Wolves, Extra 1. HP, 11,035. MP, 1,022.
Oh, you were talking about the closet. Oh, okay. Yeah, probably laughing at like,
Can you believe this guy? His closet's dirty. That's our master. HP 11,035. MP 1,022. Tiredness 0. Stats: Strength 132. Stamina 91. Agility 111. Intelligence 70. Perception 93. Available points to distribute 10. Reduction in physical damage 46%.
this man is almost at 50% full on damage reduction, just as a whole.
Skills: Passive skills and active skills. Class specific skills. Active skills. Equipped items.
Huh? Jin could only chuckle wryly as his status window seemed to go on forever and ever. It was only a short while ago that there was nothing on this section ever over here. Indeed, there had been a time like that once, but now, just from looking at his skills and equipped items, his head grew fuzzy. Even then, his class still managed to snag his attention for sure.
Class: Shadow Monarch.
This column used to be none only yesterday. To be honest, he was kind of bothered by that word whenever he had to look at his status window. The reason for that was, naturally, the word that came before that none being his class. If a hunter was not participating in a raid, he'd be no different than a jobless bum. That's what most others would think, anyway. But then he'd had to keep looking at the no job in the status window where his stat values were recorded, so how could he not feel bothered by it? They said that once you got shocked by a turtle, you keep getting frightened by the pot lids. Whenever he took a look at his class column in the past, he couldn't help but feel a bit frustrated. He knew it didn't really mean his job status, but he still felt quite bothered by it. However, from today onwards, he didn't have to mind such things anymore. Jin chuckled out uncontrollably. Yup, this must be what they call an inferiority complex, isn't it? If he made lots of money like other hunters, he wouldn't have really cared about what others thought of his life outside of raiding dungeons. But he couldn't do that. He couldn't confidently reveal his status as a hunter to anyone. Because he was a measly E rank who could barely protect his own life. That was why. I'm a E rank hunter. Whenever he said those words, anyone with some knowledge of hunters would always say that he was doing something very difficult for everyone's sake, but they would start mocking him when his back was turned. That was why he ended up minding it even more than necessary. But now, he was the possessor of a real cool job. No, a really special trait. His job still remained as a hunter, of course. If you were to describe it, then, well, it'd be more correct to say that he now possessed a special trait of Shadow Monarch. Although this wasn't the career path I was looking for. But he had no regrets. No, rather than regrets, he was completely and utterly satisfied by how things had turned out. If this wasn't his room, he'd had summoned Igris and the other soldiers right away. He really wanted to confirm the combat capabilities of his summons with his own eyes. What if these guys were able to display 100% of their combat prowess while they were still alive? I'm sure that won't be the case, though. Still, just imagining it made his heart race. Jin felt his heart beating roughly as he ran several simulations of future raids in his head. Suddenly, he became really curious about how Jinno would react. Smirk. When Jin imagined seeing Jinno's round, stunned eyes and his slack jaw falling to the floor, a chuckle automatically leaked out of his mouth. Wait, now that I think about it. If he could transform any dead life forms into his soldiers, and if the targets weren't restricted to only monsters, then... Does that mean I can extract shadows from the dead hunters too? It was quite obvious, but he didn't want to picture such a situation since he was talking about another human being here. An undead soldier emerging from the shadow of a dead person after hearing his call. Just thinking about it gave him chills. Even then, even still, what if I extract the shadow of an A or an S rank hunter? The combat potential of the resulting Shadow Soldier would simply be out of this world. Even if a Shadow Soldier could only exhibit 50% of its original strength, it'd be eminently possible to solo high-ranked dungeons as long as he had his shadows to back him up. His beating heart picked up its pace really quick. Still, Jin shook his head. I'm getting too excited here and I'm reading ahead. Still, Jin shook his head. Even if that's the case, turning a person into an undead is a bit. Now that was something only a villain would do. His combat potential might improve that way, but he didn't want to go that far. Unless a really evil bastard showed up that was worthy of such a treatment, he'd definitely not go down that route. However, it's not like opportunities to fight other dirty hunters would come around every day, right? And even if he did find that elusive opportunity, there would be many hurdles to overcome first. Well, a human wasn't a monster to begin with, after all. Indeed, for the time being, he had to be satisfied with the current soldiers. Besides, I have Icarus and he used to be a boss, so that's something. The level 7 Night Grade Shadow Soldier. Just how good would its abilities be? Jin couldn't wait for the next raid. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of Chapter 54. Onwards to Chapter 55. Chapter 55. Jin lowered his gaze slightly while feeling rather pleased with himself. But then he spotted something else in the status window.
Title: Slaughter of Wolves, Extra 1.
There was another one? Oh. Now that he thought about it, he did earn a new title as well during the class change quest, didn't he? Jin checked out the hidden title's description.
Title: The One Who Overcame the Adversity. A title only given to those who have splendidly overcome their adversity. Your stat values will rise as your HP decreases. 1% of lost HP equals 1% gain in stats.
Heck yeah! It was a truly wonderful buff where his stats would rise up as his HP was decreased. The title Slaughter of Wolves was a wonderful title as well that would give him a 40% stats increase against any and all beast-type monsters. However, because there was a strict activation condition attached to it, he often had to do without receiving the stat buff. It's the same thing as not having a title if I'm not fighting against beast-type monsters. But now, he had gotten a new title with a wonderful effect. After reading the description, he thought that this title's effect would match up quite nicely with his passive tenacity. Without wasting any more time, Jin changed his title.
Title: The One Who Overcame the Adversity.
The title he didn't set would be hidden, and if he needed it, he could swap them at any time, too. Next up, it's my stats. The rewards he got for exceeding the point limits of his class yesterday were 3. 1. His class changed to a higher grade version. 2. A new title. Finally, bonus stats. Stats. Strength 132, Stamina 91, Agility 111, Intelligence 70, Perception 93, available points to distribute 10, reduction in physical damage 46%. He still had 10 points yet to be allocated. If it was in the past, he'd have spent them all in Agility or Perception. But things were different now. Jin dumped all 10 points in Intelligence instead. Even then, his Intelligence value only reached 80. Stats. Strength 132, Stamina 91, Agility 111, Intelligence 80, Perception 93, available points to distribute 0, reduction in physical damage 46%. Compared to Strength or Agility, it simply fell way, way behind. As a matter of fact, it even fell behind Stamina, the stat he decided to put on the back burner while raising his Agility first. It was clear proof that he had been looking down on the Intelligence stat until now. Well, I never guessed that I'd somehow end up using magic, so it's understandable. For the time being, he decided to invest every single bonus stat he earned into intelligence. Smart man. He wasn't planning to change how he fought in the meantime, though. I mean, the new skills I got are assassin-type skills after all. A new skill he acquired during the fierce battle, the dagger throw. He didn't even have to take a gander at the skill description to know that it was a dagger-exclusive skill. Skill, dagger throw level 1. Active skill, required mana to activate, 30. Exclusive to daggers, causes damage by throwing your dagger. The higher the level, the greater the damage inflicted as well as the accuracy. Yup, I knew it. He had been fighting his battles as a close-quarter melee fighter. He wouldn't change his current fighting style just because he got himself a new class and a couple of new skills related to that. So he was planning to use the shadow skills as his backup, while the dagger would remain as his primary means of attack. Well, at least until I manage to raise my intelligence stat to a somewhat more useful level, that is. Excellent combat abilities, and soldiers able to support him from behind. The plan he formed in his head as he got his new class hadn't changed. But if there is one difference from my initial expectations, then that would be his soldiers potentially being a lot more useful than he thought. Who could have guessed that he was able to turn boss-level monsters into his underlings? Still, he felt that it'd be a bit of a waste not to utilize his proficiency with daggers and the skills related to that if he were to rely solely on his shadows to fight. Also, he bought the Night Killer only a few hours ago, too. If I knew I'd end up as a mage type, maybe I should have bought a magic staff or something. Of course, if he did that, he wouldn't have cleared the quest and ended up being buried under the knights instead. Jin closed the status window. With that done, he pretty much had confirmed every change that occurred to him. Wait a sec. What's the time now? While he was doing his thing, 20 minutes had flown by. Jin scratched the side of his head. I guess I should hurry up now. Huh? The corners of Jin's lips arched up. The power of his enhanced stats didn't prove to be effective only when fighting against monsters. When he concentrated, time slowed down. To be more precise, it was Jin who had gotten quicker, however. He opened the door and left his room. He entered the bathroom and took a quick shower. He swiftly wiped the water off of him. He put on whatever clothing he could find and stood before the mirror. All this, and he only needed 3 minutes. He could have moved faster, but he figured that this old, decrepit apartment would fall apart if he did. My hair hasn't completely dried out yet, but the end result was him saving over 20 minutes, so there was no need to rush now. Time to leave then. Jin was about to step out of his room, but discovered something and stopped in his tracks. He found the key for the apartment. It was sitting on top of his desk. In the past, he'd have felt a bit lazy and unwilling, but still turned back to grab the key. However, he simply extended his hand instead of walking over there. I mean, if I don't use it in times like this, just when will I ever get to use this skill? And I'm going to call it Ruler's Authority. Because that's what it's called in, like the webcomic and the anime. I'm going to call, instead of Ruler's Reach, I'm just going to call it Ruler's Authority because I like the sound of that. Bruh, did you even get clean? Bruh, that's what I'm saying. If your bath is 3 minutes, what all did you do? You need to be thorough. You can't even lather up your whole body in less than 3 minutes. You need to take your time, go through your hair. Go and for the fellas out there, the reach of you bathing does not go to your knees. You got to get the rest of your legs and your feet as well. You can't just be all like, "Well, I don't feel like bending down to get the lather on the lower half." No, you get the whole thing. It's not as far as like, "Oh, I don't feel like bending down." That's as far as I go. That's lazy. Sorry, PSA. Cleanliness PSA over. I'm sorry. This is not the session for this. This is not the session for this. I mean, if I don't use it in times like this, just when will I ever get to use this skill? The ruler's authority. The key crept forward bit by bit before flying into his open palm as if a strong magnet was reeling it in. Grab! Jin snatched the key and grinned refreshingly. Having gotten ready to leave in the proverbial blink of an eye, Jin closed the door to his room, a whistle escaping from his lips. Jin's first stop was at the bank. He was wondering just how much cash from the sales of the magic crystals had accumulated in his new bank account. I couldn't come earlier because I've been so busy until now. As the raid team leader, Jinno was in charge of managing the magic crystals. From what he told Jin, that kid had been selling all the magic crystals at the end of each day and deposited every single cent into this account. He didn't even mention in detail how much the money would be, though. That Jinno. He reports to me every little thing that happens, but he doesn't really mention much about money issues. Was it because he wasn't really interested all that much? Perhaps because he grew up lacking nothing, Jinno's interests were quite far removed from the matters involving money. No, they tended to be along the lines of celebrity gossip, stories of raids, songs or movies he liked, those kinds of things. Even if it was nominally a conversation, Kitty, you're fine. Trust me. It needed to be said, though. Even if it was nominally a conversation, it'd be Jinno who yapped on and on all by himself, though. And Jin would simply listen quietly on the side and provide appropriate responses every now and then. Now that I think about it. A chatterbox guy like him also didn't say anything about his family situation until now. Now that was pretty strange. Jin combed through his memories starting from when they met for the first time, but he couldn't remember a single instance of him mentioning his family. While thinking it was pretty bizarre, he had arrived at the bank. Well now, that's some crappy timing, isn't it? All of the ATMs were currently under maintenance. He was left with little choice, so Jin walked inside the bank branch. He got his number in the queue, waited for his turn, before eventually sitting down in front of a bank teller.
Hello there.
A fresh female teller with a bob cut hair reaching just below her ears and a refreshing smile asked him politely.
How may I be of service today?
I'd like to see the amount currently in the bank account, please.
I understand.
With a smile, the female teller took the bank book Jin presented to her. While waiting for her to do her thing, Jin scanned the inside of the bank. It was a normal Thursday afternoon, yet there was quite a large number of people inside. As he continued to look at the crowd, the female teller got to confirm the amount resting in Jin's account, and her eyes shot open super wide. Ha! Remaining amount? 1,482,920,000 won. Just a little over 1.315 million US dollars. She checked the number of digits again, but without a doubt, it started from a billion. Not only that, he hadn't even accumulated this amount over a long period of time. For the past week or so, the record showed that over 100 million won had been deposited every single day.
He looks so young. How could he?
The female teller initially took Jin as a university student who came to the local bank to get the bank book newly printed on because his mother asked him to. But her expression had changed quite a bit now. The female teller asked him, her voice containing just a sliver of ulterior motive.
Oh my goodness. May I ask what you do for a living?
Perhaps she herself was embarrassed by her own ulterior motive. The female bank teller's cheeks blushed softly as she cautiously studied Jin's reactions. He replied as if it was nothing. I'm a hunter.
Ah.
The female teller slowly nodded her head almost instinctively. The popular rumor she heard was indeed true.
I heard that hunters made lots of money, but...
But to think it'd be on this level. All of a sudden, her life as a normal working class employee came across as rather pathetic. Only until a minute ago, this man was a regular customer, just like everyone else. But now, Jin looked like a person from another galaxy altogether.
He must be a pretty high-ranked hunter, right?
This amount wasn't something an average hunter with average skills could ever hope to touch. This would be her first time meeting a truly high-ranked hunter then. The unexpectedness of the situation caused her heart to palpitate just a bit faster. Palpatine? Cause her heart to palpitate?
At last, the common sense is no more.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. The unexpectedness of this situation caused her heart to palpitate just a bit faster. Her heart was indeed beating a bit quicker now. A young customer possessing well over 1 billion won in cash would certainly be a VIP in the eyes of the bank. And well, that customer was a hunter, so he should be treated as a VVIP instead. In order to ensure that this VVIP wouldn't slip through the bank's fingers, the female employee began advertising several of the bank's financial products.
Our bank has launched brand new products and services especially catered for VIP customers such as yourself.
Her smile was no longer the business one, but a real one. The female bank teller's gaze was now firmly fixed on Jin.
Oh my, he's...
Seeing his current appearance, the one where he must have thrown on some clothes lying around and that slightly disheveled hair, her heart began beating faster than ever before. She realized that he must have been a very busy man who managed to find some free time to stop by the bank today.
This product has proven really popular with our customers lately, so how about taking a closer look at the benefits it offers, sir?
Too bad for her, Jin refused right away. No, thank you. I'm fine.
Is that so?
The female bank teller's voice was quickly laden with regrets over missed chances. Sensing that this chat might get drawn out if he said something wrong here, Jin quickly took the bank book and stood up from the seat. Thank you for your help. Have a nice day. He made his quick getaway from the bank as the hot stares from the female bank teller continued to bear down on his back. As soon as the bank's door closed behind him, Jin spat out a sigh of relief. A lot of spitting in this story. He picked up on the change in the bank teller's expression the moment he revealed his job as a hunter. Attentions of strangers and their interests. It would probably be something normal for other hunters, but it was still something new to Jin. Well, I better get used to it now. The attention on him would get even worse than this, once he'd gone through the reassessment test and gets a super high rank. He heard that there were quite a few reporters and fans following around particular hunters as well. He raised his head slightly and saw a large electronic billboard displaying a cold drink advert featuring a famous hunter attached to the side of a skyscraper. Before Gates appeared in the world, one would have found top sports stars or popular idols occupying that position. That's right. This was the age where a hunter would be at the receiving end of more attention and adulation than a celebrity. Even Jin wouldn't be an exception now. The only person who didn't like hunters nowadays were probably employees of various insurance companies. Besides all that, only after he made his escape from the bank did he get to confirm the amount in the account, and his eyes grew real wide afterwards. 1.48 billion? The total amount of money he earned after participating in 9 raids was almost 1.5 billion won. Meaning, each rank C dungeon netted him almost 160 million won. He got around 180 million from the dungeon he raided with Huangdong Suken Company. So the average amount per rank C gate he got was somewhere between 150 and 200 million each raid. Yep, that's why that bank teller was so shocked, wasn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, that was the end of chapter 55. We have reached the halfway mark, and this is where I usually take a break so I can rest myself and prepare for the remaining chapters that we have. It won't be long. I haven't eaten lunch yet because I had like a bit of a full breakfast, so it's going to be a hot minute before I eat lunch. but I will take this moment to kind of, walk around and stretch, and then we'll be right back to pick up with chapter 56. This will, of course, be cut out, as it always is, so that way we can just move into the next chapter for people who watch the VOD later. But now, I'm going to take my short stretch break. And this definitely won't be as long as my break from last time, so we can just get right back into it. Hold tight, everyone. Break time. All right, I took my break. Enough time has passed. Let's get back to the story, shall we? Chapter 56. I also corrected the height of my chair so that way it feels better for me to sit in front of my mic instead of me kind of leaning, since I am kind of tall, just a bit. Chapter 56. Now that he was done confirming his financial status, Jin splurged on a nice-looking business suit at a department store. He still found himself with more than enough free time, so he stopped by a hair salon nearby and got a much-needed haircut as well. He had transformed into someone completely different compared to when leaving the apartment. This is why having money is way better than not having any. And they said that good clothes would become one's wings, too. Jin stopped by the front of a shop store window on the street and checked out his reflection for a bit before shrugging his shoulders. His preparation was as perfect as it could get. I'm sure I won't leave behind a bad first impression. I'm a foot over your head, pretty tall. I think I'm like 5'8". I'm 5'8". Because my dad is 6'1", and I'm over his shoulder, but I am not directly neck to neck with him. Like, the top of my head is over his shoulder, but I'm not neck to neck, so I'm like, I want to say like 5'8", possibly. I'm sure I won't leave behind a bad first impression. He adjusted his clothes for a bit before confirming the time through his phone. It said 16:20. I'm supposed to get there before 5, right? Also, I am nowhere near the height of CJ, though, because CJ is tall. I'm supposed to get there before 5, right? If he got going now, he should arrive on time. Taxi! Jin grabbed a taxi and arrived in front of Jenna's school, with enough time to spare. And as luck would have it, he spotted Jenna standing by the school's front gate. Jenna! Discovering her older brother belatedly, she gasped out in pure shock.
Oppa?
Jenna's eyes became extra round like a rabbit's as she asked cautiously,
Are you really Mr. Sung Jinu?
Can't you recognize your own brother? Jenna swept her gaze all over Jin, with a stunned expression still etched on her face, her voice naturally rising higher.
It's because you've changed so much, you know.
What, so you want me to show up in my tracksuit and slippers when meeting your new homeroom teacher?
Wow.
Jenna still couldn't close her slack jaw.
Hey, your chin might fall off.
Hey, your chin might fall off at this rate. Anyways, I'm going ahead, okay? Since his sister didn't show any sign of guiding the way, Jin simply took the lead. 5 years ago, Jin too was a student in this very school. He already knew its layout like the back of his hand. Now, normally, if teachers wanted to speak to the parents, then the meeting place would either be the staff room or at the counseling office. But today's matter involved Jenna's future career path, so he should head to the counseling office. And so, Jin's steps quickened.
Oppa, wait for me!
Jenna hurriedly ran after her older brother. Hello there, Teacher Neem.
Oh, yes? Oh, hello to you too.
While on his way, Jin greeted several teachers he ran into. All of them stopped in their tracks without exception and took a look behind them at the departing back of Jin. Who was that?
Is he a graduate from this school? But there's no way I'd forgotten about such an eye-catching student like that.
Is he a new teacher?
It wasn't only the teachers who were looking at him, though.
Wow, he's good-looking, isn't he? Who is he? Wait, isn't that Jenna next to him? He must be Jenna's Oppa. Wow, he's pretty cool.
A well-built frame and a stylish business suit. Although his facial features were on the plain side, the synergy between those 2 points were powerful enough to attract the attention of the female students. Too bad. The guy in question wasn't interested at all. Jin simply let the girl's whisperings slip in one ear and slide right out the other. The one to get really psyched up was Jinna, actually. She perked her ears up and listened to the assessment of her brother coming from the surroundings in a fit of happy giggles. She then sneaked closer to Jin's side and lightly poked on his waist with her elbow.
Hiya, Oppa, you're proving to be really popular today, wouldn't you agree?
He ignored this.
Wait, now that I think about it, Oppa, you still haven't found a girlfriend yet, right?
He also ignored this one.
Should I, your trusty little sister, introduce you to a cute high school girl?
Don't do that. Do not do that. And with that, Jin began pinching her cheeks with an expressionless face. Stop being cute, okay?
I'm sorry!
Jin eventually released her cheeks. Jinna rubbed her reddened cheeks and pouted unhappily.
Cheh, I know you always like the attention, though.
Walking while lightly bickering amongst each other, they had arrived at the destination already. Jinna ran past Jin and spun around in front of the counseling office.
Oppa, we're here.
Just before entering the office, Jin looked at his sister. She wasn't budging from her spot. What about you?
Today's the teacher and parents only. I'm going back to my class as soon as you head inside.
Oh. Listening to Jinna, he remembered something similar happening back when he was still a high school senior. Back then, no one came though. It was around the time when it got harder and harder for Mom to move around, right? His mother began to frequent the hospital right around then. He feared that she might push herself too hard, so he didn't tell her about the teacher-parent meeting, and he got to suffer from his homeroom teacher's lectures for quite a while because of that. When recalling those moments, he could understand the reason for Jinna being so anxious today. Jin smiled gently and asked her, You having the night class today as well?
Oppa, don't wait for me and go home first.
Okay. Jin sneak attacked her and rubbed her hair all out of place. Study hard, okay? I'll see you later.
Ah, stop it!
See you later at home. Jin grinned and disappeared into the counseling office. Jinna's cheeks puffed up as she smoothed her hair.
Still treating me like a little kid.
Of course, she didn't display any hint of disliking that. Maybe someone saw the whole thing? Jinna quickly scanned her surroundings and confirmed that there was no one around her. She sighed in relief and trotted away to her class. If he were to put into words the first impression he got from Jinna's homeroom teacher, she looked kind of generous.
You must be Jinna's Oppa.
She was a middle-aged teacher with a wizened look about her. The overall impression she gave off was someone who could make other people feel better with a gentle and warm smile on her face. I had a teacher like that. She was amazing. God rest her soul. She perhaps knew his story because she wasn't surprised in the slightest to see Jin being there as Jinna's guardian.
How do you do? I'm Jinna's homeroom teacher. I didn't quite expect Jinna to be hiding someone this cool as her brother, to be honest.
Having received her outgoing and welcoming words, Jin bowed his head politely as well. I haven't seen her before. She must have started teaching after he graduated from the school. Didn't someone say that a person's impression would be decided upon the first meeting? After sharing their greetings, he did feel a bit more relaxed. Well, she's using polite speech to someone who's many years her junior, too. It seemed that his little sister's third year in high school wouldn't be that traumatic after all, since she was lucky enough to run into a pretty nice homeroom teacher.
Please, take a seat over there. Take a seat over here.
Sorry, here. She showed him to a chair. Jin settled down on the opposite side to Jinna's homeroom teacher across a large desk. We can rest easy about Jinna now. They conversed for a while with typical topics that a homeroom teacher and parent would normally share, the atmosphere remaining cordial and rather cheery throughout the chat. Since Jinna was a model student, there was no reason for either Jin or the teacher to raise their voices at each other.
Are you aware that Jinna has her sights set on entering a medical school?
Yes, I am. The lady teacher began reading the prepared information.
Her scores in the mock test are excellent, and her regular grades are very good as well, so she should get in without too much trouble. Still, please make sure that you don't pressure her too much at home.
Jin silently nodded his head. From the teacher's excited face, one could easily spy her high expectations of Jinna's future. The thing was, the homeroom teachers tasked with looking after high school seniors were also under a tremendous level of stress as well. Since it involved the rest of these third-year students' lives, how could they not get stressed out? That's why I heard that most try to avoid being a senior class's homeroom teacher, though. Jin also heard that there were plenty of cases where male teachers simply dumped the responsibilities to their female counterparts. When considering that, then he could say that Jinna's homeroom teacher was full of drive and passion for her students. As Jinna's guardian, Jin could only be grateful for that. Because drive and passion would mean she'd hold great interest in the future of her students. Maybe 15 minutes had passed by. The meeting was coming to a smooth end. Well then, if that's all. Jin studied the mood and was getting ready to leave, but then the teacher cautiously spoke to him.
I heard that you are a hunter.
Suddenly, the teacher became quite serious. There was something going on here. Jin immediately sensed it. Yes, I am.
If Jinna is adjudged to be an awakened, will you let her do hunter's work as well?
Never. He'd never allow her. Jin decisively stated his position. There was no need to even reconsider this. Exactly as he had suspected, there was something here, and as proof, the teacher's expression became heavier still.
As I thought.
When Jin looked at her with a puzzled expression, the teacher spoke in a determined tone of voice.
If it's not too much trouble, may I ask you for a favor?
Jin nodded his head. As long as it's within my powers. He decided to hear her out first. Well, she was his little sister's homeroom teacher, so if he refused her outright without even listening to her once, he might leave behind a bad impression here. Worried that Jin might change his mind, the teacher quickly opened her mouth. And yet they did just that. We're not even going to talk about the solo leveling mobile game, all right? We're not going to talk about it and how they decided, you know what? This is Jenna being a hunter from an alternate universe. And it's like those of us who know the story know that Jin would never allow her to be a hunter, period. Period. It doesn't matter if it's like an alternate universe. But we're not going to get into it now because I'm still waiting on an actual real solo leveling game to be released. And I feel like I may be waiting for a while. Worried that Jin might change his mind, because if I carry on this conversation, we're going to be here all day. Worried that Jin might change his mind, the teacher quickly opened her mouth.
One of my students is thinking of quitting school to become a hunter full-time after she went through the awakening process. She's not even coming to school anymore, as a matter of fact.
Aha. Such things were fairly common. There would be cases where a few newly awakened, having never experienced what real hunters did, thought of themselves as someone special, a chosen, a cut above the rest, etc., without having the faintest idea how cruel reality could be. Even though there weren't that many awakened who went on to become famous hunters and made lots of money in the world, though. The teacher let off a long sigh.
If she continues to miss school this way, then the management won't have any choice but to act, you see. Even if she wishes to become a hunter, Wouldn't it be better if she at least graduated from a high school first?
Jin nodded his head in agreement. At his positive response, the teacher's complexion brightened just a bit.
Can you help me persuade that child so she can get to graduate safe and sound?
So she not get to grad gets so she can get to graduate. Sorry,
Can you help me persuade that child so she gets to graduate safe and sound?
me flubbing words after I just took a break. I'm good though. I had me some water. The teacher did her best to smile. Jin was curious about one thing here. That student, what was her awakened rank?
From what I hear, it's the lowest rank.
In other words, a rankie.
She won't get to live.
She won't get to live long then. Jin inwardly clicked his tongue. That was the rank where one had to be especially careful about entering a dungeon. If one entered with an overly hyped mindset and without much preparation to boot, then one would become a cripple or dead almost without an exception. Such a thing happening to a kid around the same age as his little sister was a sad thing. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, that choice was that girl's to make. No one could say otherwise. It was a rather lamentable thing indeed, but he didn't feel like taking time out of his busy schedule to interfere in someone else's life choices. Besides, I'm not confident about persuading her, too. Surely, most of what he would say wouldn't come across as nice things to hear, after all. Jin was thinking of refusing the teacher and leaving. However,
Jinna would recognize the child because her name is.
when the girl's name came out from the teacher's mouth, Jin realized that he couldn't easily get up from his spot now. Jin confirmed the girl's name one more time. Teacher Neem, what was the name of the student again?
It's. By any chance, you know who it is?
Yup. The Republic of Korea was indeed a tiny place. Huh. Jin became rather speechless. At the same time, the private residence of Yu Myung-hwan, the owner of Yujin Construction. From early in the morning, countless expensive luxury vehicles continued to stream in. There was only one reason for that. It was for the ancestral rites ceremony for the first president of the Yujin Group, Yu Byung-chol, to be held later in the evening.
It's a small world after all. I will not continue this song because Disney is listening.
Yu Myung-hwan was the number one in Korea's financial sector, and Yu Byung-chol was his father. The eldest son, Yu Myung-hwan, made sure to perform the ceremony every single year, no matter how busy he was. And what with his influence being so great, every single relative found in the Yu family register had to gather in this place, without fail. Every single guest happened to be a heavy hitter, and their children all happened to be the elites of the elites, too. With the exception of one. And that exception had excused himself to the quiet and far-removed corner of the proceedings, even though no one asked him to. Sorry if I'm bothering you with this. Oh no, you're fine. But will you react to the Wuthering Waves broadcast for 2.6 as well? Yes, if it's going to be in the morning time, we'll be able to cover that and cover Hunter x Hunter later that afternoon as well. So I definitely will be covering the Wuthering Waves preview for 2.6. Yeah, that's not even a question. That's going to happen. I'll make a session for it and have it up on the roster for all to see. Yo, Finding, good to see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And that exception had excused him to the quiet and far-removed corner of the proceedings, even though no one asked him to. And he was none other than Yu Jin-ho. I'm bored. He wished that time would move faster. Going around raiding dungeons with this young Nim was 100 times, 1,000 times more enjoyable than this. What would young Nim be doing right about now? Now that he thought about it for a second, he couldn't even begin to imagine just what young Nim would, I was trying to swallow and speak at the same time and it just flubbed me up. Now that he thought about it for a second, he couldn't even begin to imagine just what young Nim would do during his off days. And so, while thinking about useless stuff in a corner, out of everyone's gazes and throwing back blameless refreshments all the time, he heard a voice he didn't particularly want to hear today. Oi! Well, sure enough. A perfect model of how an upper-class elite of society should behave was standing behind Yu Jin-O. Anyone could see that he was utterly capable of pretty much anything, too. A pair of expensive glasses, a tall, manly physique. He was none other than Yu Jin-O's biological older brother, Yu Jin-Song. The heir apparent who'd inherit Eugen's construction after Yu Myung-hwan decided to step down in the future. Yu Jin-song walked real close to Yu Jin-O and looked down on his younger brother. Relatives have come, so you should be out there greeting them. How long are you planning to act like a little kid? Whatever. Do you remember that your childish actions only paint our father's reputation with dishonor? Jin Song's tone of voice did not contain a single trace of brotherly affection. No, it was rather openly dismissive. Of course, Jin-O didn't like his older brother, but still he lacked any courage to retort back here. It couldn't be helped, really. Jin Song was a genius among geniuses who managed to stand on the top of every subject he took on back in school. And it wasn't just his excellent grades either. After graduating from school, he helped Yu Myung-hwan in various business ventures and achieved incredible success in everything he touched. Compared to him, Jin-O didn't have anything to show for. He barely managed to enter the university, for instance. Whenever his older brother stood next to him, Jin-O naturally grew small and insignificant. Still as pathetic as you can get. Jin Song frowned deeply while staring at Jin-O's lowered head, before changing his expression and walking away in hurried steps. Uncle!
Oh, Jin Song, is that you?
Only after Jin Song had gone away did Jin-O raise his head back up. This was one of the reasons why he didn't want to come home. Only if there were no stupid ancestral rites ceremony thing. Jin-O spat out a lengthy moan, and that was when he heard a sexy but also rather sharp voice coming from right behind him.
Wowzers, what a jerk. Sucks the fun out of this place, this guy.
I had to go through my head to make sure that I said that correctly, because in that instance, I wanted to make sure I said it correctly. Jin-O looked behind him, and he found his cousin, older sister by 1 year, Yu Su-hwan, standing there. And that is the end of chapter 56. Onwards to chapter 57. Yep, I rewound it. I rewound the stream. I rewound the stream. I rewound the stream to make sure. Oh, I'm good though. I'm good. You know when you have a momentary moment in your head where you think like, wait, I hope I said those words correctly. Okay. I had to replay it. I'm listening again. Yeah, I had to listen. I had to listen to it again because in my head I was thinking like, I hope I said it right. I hope I said it right. I'm good though. I'm good though. You have that momentary lapse in your head and you're thinking like, oh, I hope I didn't just curse. I had to double check. I'm good. Still clean. We're still good. Oh my goodness. Oh, one has to be careful. I'm good. Moving on. Oh, moving on. Ooh. I'm sorry, that kind of tickled me. That was the end of chapter 56. Onwards to chapter 57.
Did you hear what he just said? What a total jerk face.
Yu Su Huan approached closer before Jinno could react and lightly tapped him on the shoulder. Su Huan's forehead creased up rather prettily.
Look at you. Come on now. Seriously? Still so pathetic.
Jinno couldn't suppress his laughter after seeing her and imitate her, his older brother. Stop that. I don't feel like cracking jokes with you right now, you know?
Still so pathetic.
I'm telling you, stop it! Their ages were almost the same, so their relationship was more like that of really close friends. Su Huan stood right in front of Jinno.
Why do you keep acting like this, huh?
What do you mean?
I mean, come on. You're an awakened now, right? Don't tell me you still can't win against a regular person.
So what if I am? You think I'm gonna start throwing punches at my older brother or something?
Well, not really, no, but...
Su Huan bit on her rather shapely lower lip. Imagining the kind of punishment the patriarch of the family might saddle the poor Jinno with if the latter did throw a knuckle sandwich to his much more successful older brother. The prospect of that alone was quite terrifying, to say the least. It wasn't as if she didn't understand Jinno's inner thoughts, while he had to remain on the receiving end of the ridicule. So Su Huan narrowed her eyes and glared in the direction that Jin Song had disappeared to.
Whatever, he's still a stuck-up, no-fun jerk, that guy.
She too disliked Jin Song as much as Jinno did. She just so happened to be one of the few people who knew what Jin Song's real personality was like, hidden beneath that fakey, smiley facade. However, Jinno didn't agree with her. It wasn't because that guy was his older brother, no. No, he simply wanted to win against his older brother in an upfront manner, not badmouth him from behind like this. When Jinno kept his mouth shut, Su Huan cautiously asked him,
Hey, so that plan, is it still ongoing?
Hmm?
You know, you said you become a guildmaster at that guy's expense.
Instead of a reply, Jinno simply smiled. Who'd believe him even if he said that out loud? It'd be a relief if no one mocked him or something. Him and his brother battling like that. However, now that he held the huge ace called Hyungnim, the odds of his victory had risen up by quite a lot. If I managed to get the master license, it'd be possible to duke it out with his older brother then. He might even win. Su Huan saw the determination building in Jinno's eyes and spoke in no uncertain terms while placing her hands on her hips.
I'd rather kill myself instead of working for that man. So you do everything you can, okay? Because I don't want to fight your old man over this.
Thanks. This was how Su Huan would usually cheer him on. She was actually a rank A hunter who started her career as a famous child actor. Even with her background of being a lady or a shable was not taken into account, many guilds still tried their darndest to scout her because of her rank and fame. For some reason, though, she had refused all of their offers and continued to act as a model every now and then. However, a new offer that she couldn't really refuse had arrived at her doorstep recently, and that was to become one of the founding members of the soon-to-launch Yujin Guild. It was a direct order from the chairman himself, Yu Myung-hwan. She couldn't outright ignore the orders of the family patriarch, but she also didn't want to work for Jin Song either. Su Huan herself had a lot to worry about now. Although the kid was not all that trustworthy, she had little choice but to place her faith in Jinno. Hearing the sound of a phone vibrating coming from Jinno's pocket, Su-Huan asked him,
Aren't you going to answer that?
Oh, he was daydreaming about something else just then. He hurriedly pulled his phone out after it had been ringing for a while. The number appearing on the phone screen was a familiar one. Young Nim. Jinno's expression brightened up immediately after realizing who it was. Hello, Young Nim? He answered the call with an energetic voice. Yes? Yes, Young Nim. No, I can be there, no problem. Yes, I'll be there shortly, Young Nim. Jinno ended the call there. Su-Huan displayed her interest after seeing Jinno's moods doing a 180.
What the heck? Who was that?
Too bad for her, this was absolutely not the time for him to stand around leisurely explaining the situation to her. After all, didn't young Nim ask him for a favor just now? And with the desire to escape from this place added on top, his mind could only think about leaving as soon as possible, even if it was only a second faster. Let's talk later. Watching Jinno hurriedly run away, Su-Hyun's head tilted from side to side.
And why is he so pumped up like that now?
Every time he participated in a family meeting of some sort, Jinno always walked around with slumped shoulders, but it was a different story today.
How odd.
Not cool you made me look for your phone, it was really good. See? This voice pays the bills. I actually made you look for your phone because you actually thought it was ringing.
How odd.
Su-Huan told herself to definitely interrogate the kid later. While that was happening, Jinno was searching for his father. It'd soon be dinner time, and Jinno couldn't be excused from the family gathering without his father's approval, especially when every single family member and relatives were present. Jinno scanned his surroundings, and eventually spotted his father over in the distance conversing with some people. He had a countenance of a tiger. His personality was just as strict, him never cracking a smile with matters he thought were insignificant. For someone like Jinno, his father was a very difficult person to talk to. And I haven't even started yet. Yet he was already getting nervous. And I haven't even started yet. Yet he was already getting nervous, but he needed to be courageous here. Yeah, well, I made a promise. Jinno took a couple of deep breaths and slowly walked to where his father was. He almost turned around several times on his way, though. However, he held the urges back. And finally, Jinno managed to arrive before his father, Myung-Hwan. Father? Their distance was a bit too far for a relationship between a father and a son, though. Myung-Hwan shifted his gaze over the Jinno. What do you want? That's not a way you should okay. That's not a way you should respond to your son, I'm just saying. Myung-Hwan shifted his gaze over to Jinno. What do you want? Sensing the uncertain air, the people around Myung-Hwan distanced themselves all at the same time as if they had a prior engagement. Father, will it be okay if I went out for a little while? Jinno's voice lacked any discernible energy as he spoke to his father. I will return before dinner. Myung-Hwan stood there with an expression of someone getting ready to scold his disappointing son. But then he let off a sigh and gave his permission, albeit quite unwillingly so. Fine. Go, but return on time. Jinno's expression brightened and bowed his head. Thank you, father! He then ran out of there like a streak of lightning. Myung-Hwan stood there and looked at the back of Jinno with a stiff face. Meanwhile, his wife walked closer to him.
Dear, I just got a call from Vienna.
That was one of the messages he'd been eagerly waiting for. Myung-Hwan immediately shifted his attention over to his wife. And the results of the Continuums are?
She won, of course. She's our daughter, so it's expected, really.
A subtle smile formed on Myung-Hwan's face. but it disappeared without a trace before anyone had a chance to see it.
When will she be returning to Korea then?
She says that she's far too busy during the semester, but will come around once it ends.
Myung-hwan frowned deeply.
I told her to attend her grandfather's ancestral ceremony regardless of how busy she was.
Dear, children nowadays don't place much importance on such matters anymore.
The madam of the Yu family carefully fixed Myung-hwan's slightly out-of-shape tie and spoke to him intimately.
Also, dear, how about paying more attention to Jinho?
You're speaking about that again? A tiger is supposed to rear tiger cubs, not kittens.
Whether he's a tiger or a kitten, he's still my child. And your child, too. Did you notice? After his graduation from middle school, it was Jinho's first time smiling in front of you.
Did he do that? Myung-hwan fixed his gaze in the direction Jinho had disappeared to, his expression showing just the slightest hint of puzzlement. But that lasted only for a brief second. Myung-hwan spoke dismissively.
Maybe he found himself a girlfriend. Anyway, others must be waiting for us now. Let us go back inside.
Inside the Hunter Association's HQ located in Seoul's Gurogu, one of the association's employees was checking various equipment located within the building and came to a sudden stop in front of a miniature magic energy measuring equipment.
What the heck? What's wrong with this guy?
The number on the display panel should have stayed 0, yet the value was climbing up and down continuously. It was as if it had lost its mind. However, this employee didn't think too much about it.
I'm back.
Lunch. Lunch was presented. Yes, it is time.
Yes, it is time for food. Yeah, it's time for some more chicken wraps. Don't worry, the stream didn't freeze. I had to mute because my family came in to ask me what I wanted for lunch. Don't worry, all is fine. Don't worry. Yeah, the stream didn't stop. It didn't lag. Nothing happened. I had to mute as soon as I was done with that specific sentence. It was immediate. It was immediate, so that's the reason I muted, and it felt like the sentence was cut off. Don't worry, it's all good. The number on the display panel should have stayed 0, yet the value was climbing up and down continuously. It was as if it had lost its mind. However, this employee didn't think too much about it. As these measuring equipments were very sensitive, they broke down more often than not.
Hey, Kim Gunna!
Yes, sir?
The subordinate quickly jogged closer. How many gates has this guy measured recently?
What is its serial number, sir?
It's N-1744B.
The subordinate scanned through the log and nodded his head. 7 gates, a couple of days ago.
A couple of days ago? Let me see.
Indeed, it was the truth. 2 days ago, this equipment measured the ranks of 7 gates, and out of them 4 had been closed by the hunters already.
Were there any problems with the gates this guy measured?
No, sir. I didn't hear anything.
Oh, really?
The senior employee slowly scratched the stubble on his chin. Now, normally, when magic measuring equipment like this was found to be malfunctioning, the raid permits issued for all the gates the faulty device had measured would be rescinded immediately. It was an obvious thing if one thought about it. What would happen to hunters who entered a gate thinking it was only a rank C, but it turned out to be A or B? None of them would return alive and in one piece. High-ranked dungeons were such places. Just as the boundary between lower-ranked hunters and the higher-ranked ones were crystal clear and impossible to bridge, the differences between the higher-ranked dungeons and lower-ranked ones were also quite humongous. It was the airport's Wi-Fi? I understand, Mihai. As long as everything is fine on your end. The difference between the higher-ranked dungeons and lower-ranked ones were also quite humongous. It was not for nothing that high-ranked dungeons were all dealt with exclusively by the large guilds until now. Should I send out notices now? Letting others know wasn't all that difficult. However, never mind the discontent voices of anger coming from the teams that paid for the permits. Taking more time to measure the gates again could mean that a dungeon break might occur in the meantime. And if that happened, the association wouldn't be able to dodge the pointed criticism flying in their way. Heck, if things went wrong somewhere, he might even lose his job.
I worked so hard to get this position, too.
The Hunter Association received similar levels of treatment to state-run public enterprises. If one wanted to enter this organization, one had to put in as much effort as passing the bar exam, for example. Just thinking about losing this job, he almost blacked out right then and there.
No freaking way. Nope.
He shook his head. The subordinate also more or less knew what the superior's dilemma was. That was why he asked rather cautiously, What should we do now? It'd been 2 days already. If there were problems, shouldn't he have heard about it by now?
Let it be.
Will it be fine that way?
Well, I'm sure nothing much will happen. It's been 2 days already, right?
Well, that is true. The subordinate nodded his head.
On the report, write that N-1744B was working fine until yesterday, but developed a fault earlier today, okay?
Okay, sir. The private residence of the chief of the White Tiger Guild's 2nd Division, An Sangmin. He stopped cutting the spring onion and straightened his back, and his bones issued a loud complaint. Crack! Today's dinner? Doenjang stew. Hopefully I said that right because I want to pronounce things correctly. Also, I echo Kitty's sentiments. Please travel safely, and we look forward to seeing you back again once you're back home or wherever you're going. But safe travels. As befitting a bachelor going on 8 years strong, he had mastered the art of cooking a fair number of dishes already. It all happened 5 years ago. Back then, he filled himself up all the time with instant foods until he realized that his health was rapidly deteriorating and reflected on his stupidity. See, this is a warning for all of you. Stop eating so much fast food. Eat healthy foods. Eat at home. Make your own stuff. You will live longer. This isn't a fact. This isn't some made-up myth. This is just bona fide fact. That's the reason why I'm eating nothing but healthy foods and working out. Because I want to live. I want to live. Back then, he filled himself up all the time with instant foods until he realized that his health was rapidly deteriorating and reflected on his stupidity. He made up his mind to learn cooking, and now he was at the level of almost replicating a dish that appeared on the TV in passing. However, didn't they say that end of tuning is pure love? As his skill grew, the types of dishes that he prepared for himself became simple side dishes, such as today's doenjang stew.
Yeah, now this is what I'm talking about.
Sangmin tasted his own creation and nodded his head as if he was truly amazed by his own skills. Too bad only one person could taste this wonderful stew, though. He really felt sorry about that.
Should I invite someone over for a meal?
He immediately thought of a certain subordinate, but soon shook his head. He was already sick and tired of being called an old bachelor, yet just what kind of a misunderstanding would he arouse if he invited a fellow male employee?
I wonder if he's properly doing the job I gave him.
That guy was quite attentive and smart most of the time, yet there was this part of him that was undeniably sloppy, too.
Why am I worried about work even though I'm at home relaxing?
Time to eat his dinner, then. Sangmin placed the doenjang stew on the coffee table by the living room while humming to himself. It was now a normal thing for him to watch TV in the living room while eating dinner alone. The dining table in the kitchen was far too big and lonesome for a bachelor to have a meal alone there. Click. He switched the TV on with the remote and settled down on the couch. A news broadcast came on. Today's breaking news. One of the main advantages of being a bachelor was that he'd never have to fight someone else for the TV remote. When he turned that boob tube on, it's always to be on the channel he preferred. it always be on the channel he preferred. Sungmin watched the large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall with the corner of his eye while he scooped up a spoonful of rice.
The entirety of the United States of America is in deep shock after an unexplainable explosion took place in the American Hunters Association headquarters in Washington, D.C. A rumor is rising among some experts that the explosion was due to a new rising talent causing irreparable friction among S-rank hunters.
Uh-huh. What is this world coming to, huh? Really now?
Songmin clicked his tongue with a rueful expression, but still didn't forget to carefully choose a side dish that would signal the beginning of his dinner. Well, there weren't that many side dishes to choose from, anyway.
Well, it just has to be kimchi, no?
This is the CCTV footage recorded near the American Monitoring Division's building. Cracks suddenly formed on the walls of the building and...
Not really caring what the news bulletin was saying, the steamy rice resting on top of his spoon now acted as a home for a cold piece of kimchi he took out from the separate kimchi refrigerator. A separate kimchi refrigerator? You always lose as the husband pulls the reach for it game? Oh no. And just as Sungmin was bringing the pear to his mouth, his phone suddenly issued a loud ring.
Who the heck is it this time?
Songmin inwardly complained and picked up the smartphone, but he hurriedly answered the phone after discovering who was calling him.
Hello, this is On Sungmin speaking.
The one calling him, of course, was Sung Jinu. Sungmin's expression was bright as he answered the call. However, while listening to Jin's story, Sungmin's expression progressively became puzzled.
Pardon me? You were wondering if you could tag along during the training of our new recruits?
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 57. Onwards to Chapter 58.
It's done.
Jin ended the call. Initially, Chief Sungmin was confused by the sudden request. But yeah, Chapter 58. It's done. Jin ended the call. Initially, Sungmin was confused by the sudden request, but once he heard Jin's reasons, he gave his okay rather easily. And now Jin would be able to check out White Tiger's method of training their new recruits. And I also managed to borrow the van, too. Even though the kid was busy, Jin still showed up. Jin couldn't help but think that, even though the kid was busy, Jinno still showed up. Jin couldn't help but think that the kid should be praised wholeheartedly. Jinno came running even though he was tied up with something, and didn't even forget to greet him properly, too. And so, the preparations were complete. Right now, Jin was standing in front of the apartment building that the problematic female student lived in. It's really close to my own place, isn't it? It only took 2 minutes of walking to get here. It was the proverbial stone's throw away. He took a look around his vicinity, and he was still in the familiar district. Too tiny and cramped with lots of old apartment buildings standing close to one another. Meaning, this girl's family circumstances weren't that good. Just how his used to be not too long ago. He could understand where she was coming from, now that she was nominally a hunter. Well, Jin was also like that once upon a time. Too bad. Those people died the quickest. Didn't he get injured every single time? Just how many times did he come close to getting killed? If it weren't for his mother suffering from that darn rare illness, he'd have quit this crap a long time ago. For a ranky hunter, a dungeon was a horrible place to be in. If left alone, this girl would definitely grow to regret ever being a hunter. No, it'd be more likely that she'd die long before she had the chance to regret making that decision. Of course, that happens all the time, unfortunately. The incidents of hunters dying or getting gravely injured happened dozens of times in a single day, after all. It was impossible to talk all these people out of going on a raid, nor was there any reason to do so. Well, they made their choices, so they had to bear the responsibilities of their decisions accordingly. Don't we all? However, however, if he didn't know the girl in question, he wouldn't have cared. But now that he knew who she was, he couldn't just ignore this one. Indeed, Jin was rather familiar with this girl. He sensed the presence of a person and raised his head and spotted the problem child walking towards him. Her hair rolled up in a bun above her head, slightly rough and tired eyes. She was definitely someone he knew.
Uh,
The female student discovered Jin there and tilted her head.
what are you doing here, Ajusi?
Just as Jin did, the female student also recognized him right away. Yup, this world is indeed too dang small. Jin scratched the side of his head. The female student who declared that she'd become a hunter, she was none other than the underage kid, the lone female in the raiding team Jin-O had assembled. The one that briefly caused Jin to worry slightly since she was still so young and all. Han Song-yi. When he heard that name from Jinna's homeroom teacher, a flood of emotions briefly inundated him, so he just had to confirm it for himself. And sure enough, the date Han Song-yi began missing school coincided with the day Jin-O's team began its raiding missions. With that, it kind of became a bit harder to think of this matter as someone else's mess. In a way, he felt responsible for it. As a matter of fact, he couldn't help but wonder if he was the cause of this mess to begin with, after letting a kid who didn't know how the world really operated taste some easy cash, and give her false impressions that she was capable of doing anything now. At least one thing's for sure. No matter when it might be, he'd feel pretty bad if he heard of Han Song-yi perishing inside a dungeon. He had done nothing wrong, so he shouldn't suffer through a couple of nights' sleep, lost through guilty consciousness, no? And so he decided to make time for this evening and sort this mess out. It wasn't that difficult to begin with, anyway.
What's going on?
Song-yi's eyes opened wider as she stared at Jin, and then her expression became rather unimpressed.
Wait, could it be that the hunter my teacher wanted to introduce me to was you, Ajusi?
Her continuously calling him Ajusi got on his nerve a bit. But Jin maintained his smile and nodded his head. But then...
I don't know what my teacher told you, but I'm not interested in going back to school anymore, and I'm definitely not going to give up being a hunter.
Song-yi curtly stated her position. She seemed to be a quiet kid when she was with the raid team, but her attitude definitely changed when the story involved her. She was definitely one of those headstrong modern kids who thought they knew how to draw the line on where their opinions and viewpoints lied. Too many people like that on Twitter right now.
Well, the thing
is, there's a girl back in my house who's exactly like you, you know. Jin grinned slightly. Song-yi thought that she had managed to come across tough and intimidating, but seeing that Jin's response was completely out of her expectations, she began to get flustered somewhat. Jin spoke to her in an even tone of voice. I wasn't planning to tell you to quit being a hunter. Song-yi's eyes widened further.
I'm sorry?
Kids like her would always act completely opposite to what you tell them to, so he wasn't even planning to talk her out of it. No, all he had to do was to show her what the reality was like, just once. That's what happened to me, anyway. He realized the truth about participating in his first raid, and that was, reality was far crueler and heartless than his imagination had been. Song-yi did her very best to hide her fluster and asked him,
Then what brings you here?
Jin took a step closer. Song-yi flinched noticeably and was about to retreat a step back, but upon realizing that such an action would make her look weak, she forcibly stopped her body from moving. Jin now stood before Song-yi. Although he didn't mean to, and no one would understand the meaning behind it, an ominous smile still found its way to Jin's lips. I'm here to mold you into a better hunter. There was no need to persuade her to accompany him to a dungeon. She said,
Okay, I'm coming.
As soon as he told her that she now had an indelible, yeah, they like their fancy words with this one, indelible opportunity to witness how the White Tiger Guild conducted its new recruit training exercise. She didn't even suspect that Jin had any ulterior motives. As they walked to the van, Song Yi asked him how he knew her teacher, and he simply showed her the photo of him and Jinna stored in the phone.
Just you were Jinna's oppa?
Were as in past tense. What the heck? For a while now, a certain word was really getting on his nerves, but since everything was going according to his plan, he endured it and let it slide. Get in.
Thanks!
Jin drove Song Yi to the location where the White Tiger Guild was holding its evening training. Since he was told that the training exercise would only commence at 9 p.m., there were still plenty of time left. The van that was clearly too big for only 2 people glided across the road. Was this because both his agility and perception had been enhanced a great deal? He had never driven a car after getting his driver's license some time ago, yet the actual driving proved to be rather easy. When he concentrated a bit harder, all the other cars on the road looked as slow as worms to him. Yup. Stats really come in handy in all sorts of things, don't they? Meanwhile, Song Yi asked him for the passenger seat.
Does Jinna really study the whole day, even back home? I mean, I heard rumors that she actually plastered pages of a dictionary on her wall so she can memorize them even when she falls asleep.
There was such a rumor about Jinna? But she was such a fried chicken-loving sleepyhead when she was at home. Jinna's just like you know. When she's home, all she does is play games, eat, and sleep. Well, it was mostly sleeping, but still.
That must be a lie. How come her grades are so amazing then?
I can hardly believe it myself. She used to frequent arcades with me back when she was still in middle school, you know. They chatted about this and that and eventually arrived near the vicinity of the gate. Jin stopped the van. The area they were in was designated as a location where gates frequently appeared. Almost no human beings dared to live around here anymore, so it was quite convenient to park the van. From what he heard, almost 80% of houses here were deserted. The story went that once the Romanian populace moved out, the whole district would be shut down. Jin and Song Yi exited from the van. He scanned the surroundings and immediately picked up on the overflowing amount of eerie, creepy chill in the air. For some reason, he thought he could hear loud cheering coming from the shadows beneath his feet. How fast he going to brake like that? Probably too fast. Because when your perception makes everything look slow and you feel like you're moving faster, you're probably moving faster than you think. There constitutes a screeching halt when you're driving a van. Bobbing and weaving through traffic with supernatural power. Needs to ease up. For some reason, he thought that he could hear loud cheering coming from the shadows beneath his feet. He was probably imagining it, though. Song Yi got a bit scared by the eerie atmosphere of the place, but after spotting the group of hunters in the distance, regained most of her self-confidence back. The way her eyes sparkled, it was as if she had just ran into a super celebrity or something. Oh well, they are hunters from the Super Guild White Tiger, so it can't be helped. To a high schooler who yearned to become a real hunter, those people would be no different than actual celebrities, no? Also, such a thought process wasn't so strange to begin with, when considering how mass media packaged these hunters on the TV and such. Oh, so you really came. Hyun Ki-cho quickly ran over to Jin after discovering him. Do you still remember me? Oh wait, so you really came. Sorry, Ki-cho, it's Ki-cho. Ki-cho quickly ran over to Jin after discovering him. Do you still remember me? Jin lightly nodded his head. Sensing that Ki-cho's smile wasn't the fakey business one, but the real thing, a smile also formed naturally on Jin's face as well. They haven't met too many times before, but this Kichol character seemed to be someone good-natured and easy to talk to.
I heard it from the chief. Ah, so this young woman is her?
Hello there.
Song Yi lowered her head in greeting. While they were saying hellos in this fashion, a big muscular guy sauntered over and spoke in an irked tone of voice. Let's stop this useless chatter and get started already. We didn't come here for a picnic and it's almost 9 p.m. The muscular guy didn't even wait for the response and walked back towards the gate. Something didn't feel quite right with this guy, so Jin asked Kichol,
Who's that?
Oh, he's one of our new recruits. He's ranked A, actually. He must be feeling a bit unhappy after I asked him for his understanding earlier. He even asked me if I thought that going to a dungeon was a fun pastime or some such.
He's a rank A?
Kichol nodded his head, thinking that such a reaction was reasonable coming from a proud rank A guy, from a proud rank A hunter like that guy. Jin asked again,
What are the ranks of today's Raider team? Raider team members.
1 rank A, 7 rank Bs, and 4 rank Cs for the total of 12 members.
A rank A and several Bs just for a rank C dungeon?
Well, their ranks might be high, sure, but they are all still newbies, you see. We're trying to help them earn first-hand experience inside an easier dungeon.
Kichol spoke with some pride in his voice. He then added quickly that after today, these guys would immediately be inserted into high-ranked dungeons, meaning they could definitely be counted as a proper combat force.
Still, 1 A and 7 Bs, huh?
Jin's expression subtly changed. Actually, this was the reason why Chief Song-min gave his permission. He was thinking of convincing Jin with the mighty display from the White Tiger Guild's new talented recruits. However, quite contrary to Song-min's and Kichol's expectations, Jin could only look on at the gate with a disappointed expression. The gate was rated at C. Compared to that, the members of the raiding team were simply too brilliant to the point that they were even blinding the onlookers with their auras.
If the raid is too easy, the shock factor will lessen, though.
That was what his main worry was about. But he slowly shook his head.
No, wait. If she sees it with her own eyes, she should still be able to feel it.
Feel how weak and powerless a rank E would be inside a dungeon, that was. That alone would be sufficient.
When can we enter?
Still utterly oblivious to Jin's real intentions, Song Yi began whining already.
When can we enter?
Sorry, that was her reading.
When can we enter?
Still utterly oblivious to Jin's real intentions, Song Yi began whining already. When Jin took a look at her, her expression showed how pumped up she was.
Let's see how long you can keep that up.
Jin inwardly swallowed his laughter and spoke to Kichol.
We'll be on our way now.
Ah, yes, wait. Yes, wait, hold up a sec, please.
Kichol sneaked a glance around him and then whispered something to Jin's ears.
Excuse me, Jin Hunterneem? Sung Jinu Hunterneem? If you decide to step in, today's raid will become too easy. So please, refrain from doing anything in there, please?
Since Jin's purpose today was to simply observe, obviously he wouldn't enter the fray.
I won't step in.
He'd be going around other rank C dungeons with Jin'o from tomorrow onward, so what point was there for him to disrupt the White Tiger's training exercise? Of course, he'd use his shadow soldiers to conquer those dungeons. For that reason alone, he had to bring Song Yi over here.
Besides, I don't feel like revealing my shadow soldiers with a matter this simple either.
If he showed how easy it was to clear a dungeon with his shadows busy beating monsters to bloody messes, there was a real danger that Song Yi's delusions of grandeur might get inflated instead. And so, Jin and Song Yi approached the gate. Unlike that rank A hunter, there were some people who welcomed the duo rather happily. Hello!
Nice to meet you.
Since they weren't here to make money, the higher the head count, the better it would be for everyone. As it was customary, they introduced each other. But when it was the turn of the rank A hunter,
I don't care.
He simply walked inside the gate.
Well, let us get going as well.
Let us get going as well. The new recruits of the White Tiger also began entering the gate one by one. Before Song Yi entered, she turned her head back to Jin.
What about you, Yajusi?
Jin crossed his arms and replied to her.
After I see you enter first.
Song Yi's face was stiff with nervousness, but she still resolutely nodded her head and jumped into the gate. Yo, CDs, what's going on? We are on chapter 58 right now. Jin took a quick breath and stood before the gate. He sensed someone looking at him, so turned around to confirm, only to spot Ki Chol over yonder waving at him and cheering him on. He reverted his gaze back to the gate. However... The surface of the gate continued to ripple softly non-stop.
But shouldn't the surface return to being a solid black barrier once a person goes through it?
Right now, it was continuously rippling about like the surface of water.
Something was off here.
Jin placed the tip of his hand against the surface, and it reacted like a sticky liquid, clinging to his fingers and following him as he lifted his hand away.
Could this be?
Jin quickly spun his head around and met Ki Chol's gaze. At this point, even Ki Chol had sensed something was very wrong. Jin loudly shouted at him,
"Call your main raid team! Hurry!"
As soon as he finished shouting, Jin was automatically sucked into the gate.
What the heck was that? Vice Chief Wan! Vice Chief Wan?
Ki Chol hurriedly ran towards the gate. The 3 remaining employees of White Tiger Guild also hurriedly followed after him. Once he got to the gate, though, Ki Chol began freaking out.
This can't be.
Hunters weren't the only newbies today. The new employees were also brought along in order to train them as well. So, none of the newbies had experienced anything remotely like this. The trio of new employees looked at young Ki Chol with completely stunned expressions.
Vice Chief, the gate surface! It's changing to a red color!
As if a drop of blood had fallen in it, the surface of the once black gate was now slowly changing to the crimson red color. Ki Chol ignored the confused employees and hurriedly called someone. Click.
Chief, it's the red gate! The gate our people just walked into changed into a red gate!
Sung Min's voice became urgent, shocked. Ki Chol raised his head and stared at the gate, now dyed completely in the color of blood. The ripples on the surface had stopped now, too. Ki Chol nervously swallowed his dry saliva. That's 5!
I don't know how, but it's definitely a red gate, Chief!
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of chapter 58. Onwards to chapter 59. Chapter 59.
A red gate? Just what on earth is going on here?
The CEO of the White Tiger Guild, Baek Yoon-ho, ran straight to the gate's location as soon as he received the urgent call. The complexion of Ki Chol could only be described as ashen.
Well, sir?
I'm going to see for myself first.
Yoon-ho walked past the guild employees who looked like they were in the middle of a funeral.
It really is a red gate.
Baek's own complexion hardened instantly after checking out the gate's color. What was a red gate? It was a terrifying phenomenon where the dungeon beyond it would actually connect to a whole new world, not some underground cavern. And in order to escape from it, either you had to kill the boss of the area or wait for the dungeon break to occur. In other words, once you stepped inside, it'd be the end. Once the gate changes its color to red, all external influences would be completely cut off. Escaping from it and trying to enter it, both of these activities were now impossible. Yoon-ho pressed his hand against the gate's surface, as he thought it was hard, impossible to enter.
Darn it!
He says something else, but I don't I don't use profanity. Love listening to your read-throughs. We'll continue this last chapters a bit later. Wish you all a wonderful night. You have a wonderful night as well, Mihai. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a member. Thank you for everything. You enjoy the rest of your time. From here onwards, there was no way to lend aid to those trapped inside. Yunho asked Kichol,
I thought this was supposed to be a rank C gate.
Sir, it was a rank C.
Did you call the association to confirm it?
Yes, sir. However, the association is insisting that it's still a rank C gate.
Those darn idiots!
So, once again, I can't say some of the stuff that Bake is saying. Ramil, it's good to see you. We are on chapter 59. You're late? Yes, you are. But don't worry, you'll be able to watch this later on. It's all good. You just showing up is good enough for me. Bake Yunho angrily cussed out. A red gate would only occur when the dungeon itself was ranked very high to begin with. There was a whole new world on the other side of the gate, yet the leaking magical energy only equaled that of a rank C dungeon. That crap wouldn't fly anywhere. Even from a casual glance, you could tell this thing should have been ranked B at the bare minimum, if unlucky, rank A, or worse, something even higher than that. However, the only reason why the association still had the audacity to insist that they weren't wrong?
Sir, should we use our own equipment to measure the magic energy?
When Kichol asked him, Yunho shook his head.
No magic energy leaks out from a red gate, so it's impossible to measure it now.
Because it would be almost impossible to take another measurement. That was why. There was no concrete way to find out what the problematic gate's actual rank was at this point in time. And besides, the rank of this darn gate wasn't important anymore.
How many of our people went in there?
Total of 12, sir.
How many are high-ranked hunters?
As the leader, rank A Kim Chio Hunter Neem, and there are also 7 rank B hunters as well. 1 rank A and 7 rank Bs.
The new recruits. Will they be all right?
Yunho slowly shook his head.
We don't have a choice but to think of them.
Oh, wait.
The new recruits. Will they be all right?
Yunho slowly shook his head.
We don't have a choice but to think of them as all KIA. If lucky, the rank A and 2-3 rank Bs might make out alive.
Only if those trapped inside enjoyed Lady Luck's blessing, that was. That was how lacking these numbers were. With the current composition of the raid team, they should only be enough to barely conquer the weakest of rank B dungeons. Anything tougher than that, and you'd be asking for way too much. Without some kind of a miracle, the odds of their new recruits returning alive was as good as none. Yunho's complexion darkened even further. Kichol studied the mood of his boss and cautiously opened his mouth.
Sir? Actually, there was someone else who also entered the gate along with our recruits.
Yunho shifted his gaze to his subordinate, his expression changing slightly. Could it be that a high-ranking hunter was in the vicinity and entered along with the team after getting curious about the training process? What else could qualify as a miracle? This would certainly be it. Yunho's voice rose up.
Who was that person?
He's the hunter I've been trying to scout for the last few days, sir.
He's the hunter I've been trying to scout for the last few days, sir.
The reply came from behind instead. When Yunho and Kichol looked over to confirm who it was, they spotted Sangmin, soaked in his own sweat and breathing roughly.
Apologies for being late, sir. The traffic was unexpectedly heavy.
Sangmin's home was furthest from everyone here, so he ended up arriving last. Sangmin shifted his gaze over to the gate. The red gate reminded him of the entrance to an impregnable fortress. Just looking at it made it harder to breathe. However, if it's Hunter Sung Jinu, then... A man who overcame several incidents already unscathed could potentially create a new miracle all by himself. That's what he thought. Yunho, I keep wanting to say Yunhon. Yunho hurriedly approached Songmin.
Are you saying that the hunter you've been keeping an eye on is in there too? Is that it?
Yes, sir. Yunho suddenly recalled something.
Now that I think about it.
Shifan had been rather busy lately, and as it so happened, there was a hunter he had been trying to scout to the guild. Shifan's instincts were almost always never wrong.
What if?
A spark of hope was lit in Baek Yunho's heart.
What is his rank? Is it A? Or maybe a B?
If this hunter was ranked S, then Yunho would have known the identity of this mystery hunter. There were less than 10 rank S hunters in the whole of South Korea, after all. However, Songmin was shaking his head.
Oh my god!
Yunho's hardened face finally brightened up considerably.
Are you saying that a rank S hunter also went in there?
Songmin calmly replied, No, sir, he's a rank E. Almost right away, Baek Yunho's expression crumpled to a man who accidentally chewed on bugs. Jin couldn't help but get flustered here.
Could this be the gate that supposedly takes you to another world?
It'd be his first time experiencing one, but he had read all about it online, from the testimonies of those who managed to survive it, and they all said the same thing, that it felt like they were being sucked in. Jin had to agree with that assessment too. As soon as the gate sucked him in, a deep darkness swallowed him, and a little while later, he felt like he was being slid across something slick and smooth. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in the middle of a wintry forest, completely covered in white snow.
What is this place?
Hey, this doesn't look like the interior of a dungeon, does it? Hey, look! The gate's disappeared too! Other hunters were looking around in confusion, unable to hide their panic as well. While they were getting more and more flustered, Jin calmed himself down, narrowed his eyes, and scanned the surrounding area.
I don't sense anything suspicious.
Thanks to the system repeatedly sending him to weird places, Jin had gotten used to being in an unexpected foreign environment, which also meant that he could gain his calmness quickly. The first thing that entered his view was a huge tree. Not just one, but countless coniferous trees. Oh, coniferous. Someone likes their thesaurus. Coniferous. The first thing that entered his view was a huge tree. Not just one, but countless coniferous trees. The kind never seen before on Korean soil were shooting up straight to the sky with nary a visible gap in between them. As he scanned his surroundings, his eyes ran into someone else's. And it was the Renke hunter Kim Cho, who was also cautiously scanning the vicinity like him. The two of them glared at each other for a little while, before looking away. Song Yi had approached him and began tugging at his clothes in the meantime.
Excuse me? Something bad happened just now, right?
She looked really scared. Her previous self-confidence was nowhere to be found. But then, Jin's hand suddenly shot out towards Song Yi's face. Song Yi's eyes opened super wide. Crab! The arrow caught in Jin's hand trembled continuously as if it lamented missing its target, and it would be the middle of Song Yi's forehead. Finally realizing what just happened, her face paled in an instant. However, the expected scream came from somewhere else. Plop. A male hunter fell to the snowy ground with blood bubbling out of his mouth. An arrow lodged deep into his temple. The snowy ground was soon dyed in his blood. Hunters began gasping out in shock. 2 arrows flew in at the same time, one aimed at Song Yi while the other one hit its mark. Because of that, though, no one saw Jin catching the other arrow.
Over there! It's those bastards!
One of the rank B hunters pointed towards the top of a tree located far away. But even before he had begun pointing his finger, both the gazes of Jin and Keep Chol were fixed there. They could see two life forms standing over there, on the snow-covered branches.
Two people? No, I should say two creatures, huh?
Long white hair, icy white skin, and silver eyes, and the race-specific trait of pointy ears. These monsters were famed for their particularly beautiful countenances, as well as for their rarity, as they could only be encountered in high-ranked dungeons.
Ice elves.
Also known as white phantoms. Those who had never encountered one referred to them as ice elves, but the hunters who did encounter them and fought with them all took to calling them white phantoms instead, while also adding that a pretty name like elf shouldn't be mixed together with these abominable creatures. Jin could immediately guess why the hunters before him all gnashed their teeth at the mere mention of the white phantoms.
They're laughing at us, huh?
The two archers had lowered their bows, and disgusting smiles were clearly visible on their faces. It was as if they were staring at a table full of delicacies and couldn't decide which one to start eating.
And you decided on this, huh?
Jin's eyes narrowed to a slit. One arrow to the far left and another one to the far right. That was no coincidence. The hunter with an arrow stuck in his head was a 30-something who had gone through the awakening process only recently. With the exception of Song Yi, he'd be the weakest of the group. As for the other arrow,
it was aimed at Song Yi.
Indeed, the arrows were meant for the two weakest members of the team.
If it weren't for the system, I'd be the one with an arrow stuck in my head instead.
I flubbed that one.
If it weren't for the system, I'd be the one with an arrow stuck in my head instead.
Yeah, I read too fast for that, so I apologize for my cadence. The cheap tactic of the White Phantoms certainly managed to bring out Jin's ire. He raised the caught arrow so the creatures could see and broke it in half. Crack! Perhaps taking that as a challenge, the White Phantom who shot that arrow pointed at Jin and drew a line under his chin. Seeing that, Jin simply smirked. However, his eyes were definitely not laughing.
I'll kill you with my own hands.
Receiving the trivial provocation of the monster, Jin simply glared coldly at his reply. Don't do that, we know what may happen. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'm not gonna read too fast, and I'm being extremely careful. Don't put me in another laughing fit, please. Receiving the trivial provocation of the monster, Jin simply glared coldly at his reply. Soon, the pair of white phantoms disappeared below the tree.
Looks like this is their way of welcoming us.
Finally, Kim Chol opened his mouth. The lone rank A of the group opened his mouth, prompting everyone to focus their gazes on him as if they had made an agreement prior to coming here. Actually, he was the leader of this raid team, so that might have been it, though.
I'm sure some of you have realized it by now. This is inside the raid gate.
Kim Chol spoke as if it was the most obvious thing in the whole world. Of course, no one complained about it.
Which means no one will be able to enter here after us, until either we all die or there's a dungeon break.
The group all gasped out softly.
Yeah.
All right, Kabaddi's got a dip. Put tags in chat for the chapter. Should be easier to make stamps by finding them. Y'all be good. Chat later in Discord. Thank you, Kitty, for stopping by. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being a member. Thank you for everything. But you enjoy the rest of your day. The fact that they could no longer hope for a rescue came across as a big mental shock. Meanwhile, Kim Chol continued on.
If we remain here, we'll all die from this freezing cold, or from those bastards ambushing us. However, I'm going to clear this place and get out of here, by myself if necessary. Are there any of you who wish to join me?
Kim Chol's powerful, confident stare and his broad shoulders imparted a certain sense of trust. Hunters glanced at each other for a bit before unanimously voicing their desire to travel together with him.
Let us move together. I'd like to join you. Let us go back together, alive.
I want to help. I want to help too.
However, Kim Chol shoved away the chest of the male hunter who said he wanted to help. Even though he controlled his physical strength, at the end of the day, he was still in A rank. The male hunter retreated several steps back. A deep frown etched on his face from the immense pain coming from his chest.
Excluding you.
Excuse me?
And also you, and you.
Kim pointed a few more others, not just that male hunter. Of course, both Jin and Song Yi were included in that. It was here that Jin's own forehead creased up ever so slightly. All in all, 5 people in total. They were all either rank C or lower.
It's unfortunate, but I won't be taking you along.
What did you say?
Do you know
anything of...
Do you know anything? Let me read this whole thing. Let me read it again.
It's unfortunate, but I won't be taking you along.
What did you say?
Do you know anything about Red Gates?
The male hunter shook his head at Kim Chol's question.
In here, one day equates to 1 hour outside. The worst case scenario, it'll take several months before the dungeon break to occur, or I kill the boss. Under that kind of situation, I can't walk around with baggage like you.
We're baggage to you?
The hunters who were pointed out by Kim Chol got all riled up, but once the rank A hunter glared at them, they all shut their mouths closed. Kim continued on, now sounding as if he was being considerate and all.
Don't feel too bad, however. If all of you manage to survive until we kill the boss, then all of you will go back home alive, too.
Even still...
The singled-out hunters sent out desperate pleading stares to the hunters near Kim, but not a single one stepped forwards. No, they were too busy avoiding meeting the gazes. It was then...
Excuse me?
A rank B female hunter from Kim's group raised her hand. Kim turned to look at her and she pointed at Jin.
It's fine to go over there from here, right?
Do what you want.
She didn't even look back once and walked straight to Jin's side. Kim alternated his gaze between the woman and Jin and smirked derisively before declaring out loudly,
We've got an opening on this side, so I'll accept one more person.
Me!
The male hunter who got shoved away by Kim just now hurriedly ran over, fearing that the lone rank A in the group and the leader might change his mind. Well, that was how it should be. Jin thought as much.
Yup, this woman is the strange one here.
Jin stared at the woman now standing next to him with a puzzled expression on his face. Her gaze met with Jin's and she whispered in a low voice so no one else could hear.
That man Kim Chio? Well, he couldn't see the arrow flying in, you see?
Even if one was a high-ranked hunter, there was no way every stat of his would be developed equally. For instance, he might be a rank A, but his agility could be low. Jin knew how stats worked, so he didn't think too much about it.
So what are you saying?
Then the woman smiled refreshingly.
I'm guessing you're not a rank E, am I right?
And that is the end of chapter 59, everybody. Onwards to chapter 60 and the last chapter for today's reading. Chapter 60! In front of the Red Gate. Baek Yoon-ho's expression remained gloomy. Sung Min provided a short summary on who Sung Jin-woo was, but his anxiety level hadn't decreased by one bit.
In the end, that's all speculation, isn't it?
Yes, sir, you're right. Sung Min readily accepted that assessment. It was true that he didn't know anything about Jin, after all. But if the boss checked Hunter Sung Jinu out with his own eyes, he'd have changed his mind right away. There was something different about Sung Jinu, and the fact that he couldn't adequately describe that with words frustrated Sung Min to no end. Yunho's gaze shifted back to the red gate.
In the end, the one person I can believe in is Kim Cheol.
It was then. Sir, there won't be any problems with Hunter Kim Chol, I assure you. One more person butted in among the group of Baek Yun-ho, An Sung-min, and Hyun Ki-chyo. The gazes of three men automatically shifted in that direction simultaneously. It was Ju Song-shan, chief of the 1st Division of the White Tiger Guild. He scanned the 3 people in front and spoke in a proud voice. I've been training Hunter Kim Chol quite strictly, so he could be ready for all contingencies. Originally, the initial training of new recruits was left to the 2nd Division, but the 1st Division would be in charge of the awakened ranked A or higher. Those promising individuals who were scheduled to enter the ranks of the main combat force soon got to enjoy a different starting point from everyone else. Seeing Ju Songjan's confidence, Yunho's expression softened slightly.
How were Hunter Kim Cheol's grades?
They are excellent, sir. Just his combat capabilities alone, he'd not fall behind anyone from the current members of the guild's main combat force.
Is that so?
A smile managed to return to Yunho's lips. Kim Cheol was a rank A. Even among high-ranked hunters, he was a talent that must be held on to. If, as the leader of this raid team, he commanded the rank B hunters well and managed to clear this gate, there would be some losses among the rank C hunters, but from the White Tiger's perspective, the survival of high-ranked hunters came first.
It's a relief that Hunter Kim Cheol's abilities are top-notch.
The weakened sparks of hope regained some life again. Song Shan managed to calm the boss down and narrowed his eyes at Song Min, clearly in derision. From what I heard just now, a ranky hunter who might have gone through a reawakening process, was it? You were saying something about that? Song Shan snorted dismissively. My Hunter Kim Cheol should prove to be more effective than someone like that, a hunter with no proven qualities. Song Min's expression hardened. He was being looked down on here. However, he didn't raise his voice and let anger overtake him.
Let's just wait and see who's correct at the end of the day.
The 4 men shifted their gazes at the same time over to the red gate that had trapped their hunters. The crimson light oozing from the gate seemed especially more ominous than ever before.
I'm guessing you're not a rank E, am I right?
The female hunter asked Jin quite openly. Jin opened his mouth in response.
Well then, let
me ask you something as well.
Of course.
Jin shifted his gaze over to Kim Chol and the hunters gathering around him. They were busy planning their next move before they got going.
You guys, you're supposed to be new recruits, yet how can you be this calm?
The first thing we've been taught is that anything can happen inside a dungeon, you see?
Anything could happen inside a dungeon, she said. Jin knew this fact better than anyone here, actually.
Every one of us has been trained properly, especially that Kim Cheol over there. He even received a special training regimen, too. He's scheduled to join up with the White Tiger's main combat force.
They didn't fear dungeons because they had received prior training. Jin could only be flabbergasted by that revelation. And then, almost right away, he realized that all of these people were no different from Han Song-yi. She said that they had been sufficiently trained or whatever, but just what kind of uses would that have here? They were simply showing off without realizing how terrifying a dungeon could become.
Knowing something and experiencing it are 2 different things.
More so when your fragile belief of you knowing everything about dungeons develops just a tiny little crack. It all come crashing down like a dam with a hole getting swept away by the deluge of water. Building up one's confidence took a long time, but breaking it down only took a single moment. He could see the fate in store for Kim Cheol's team already. They might look okay from the outside, but in the end, they were all helpless noobs.
You still haven't answered me, though.
Excuse me? After hearing that, Jin's gaze shifted back to the strange woman.
My question. You haven't answered it yet.
The question about whether he was a rankie or not. She seemed to be a rather tenacious customer, this woman. Why should I tell you that? He replied in a blunt and a bit curt manner, but the female hunter, Park Hui-jin, was now crying out in elation and clenched her fists. Inwardly, of course. Park Hui-jin had met many people in her life, and she immediately knew what Jin's response meant. And that would be his unbridled confidence.
Yes, I didn't see it wrong.
There was another thing that gave her even more assurance. While she was being trained back in the White Tiger Guild, she had often witnessed the movements of many high-ranked hunters. However, Jin's hand just now. She had never seen anyone move as quickly as Jin's hand catching that arrow.
I mean, all I could do was to barely confirm what just happened, even with my eyesight.
She used to be a top-tier athlete before becoming a melee-type hunter through her awakening, so she was pretty confident of her dynamic vision. Hui Jin's eyes began sparkling.
This guy, he's at least rank A.
Or even higher than that. In order to ascertain a more definitive answer, Hui Jin asked him again.
Don't be like that now, can't you tell me, please?
Don't feel like it. That was the end of their conversation. Jin turned his head away. He definitely didn't feel like being in the receiving end of endless stream of questions. And also, Kim Chol was walking closer to them as well. Jin's eyes and Kim's met. We will. Kim's voice was harsh, low. Didn't matter what he was trying to convey here, he sounded threatening and menacing. Be using the road. He didn't saunter over here just to declare which path they would be using, though. No, Kim's eyes were asking what Jin's group would do, along with the hidden threat of, don't you dare follow us. Now, real quick, family is here with food. I'm going to help them bring that in, and I'll come back up. Don't worry, we're still making good time with this entire chapter. So let me help them out. Don't worry, this little break will be cut out. Too. So yeah, I'll be right back. Haha, good food awaits me. Let's continue. Sorry about that, everybody. He didn't saunter over here just to declare which path they would be using. Though. No, Kim's eyes were asking what Jin's group would do, along with the hidden threat of, don't you dare follow us. Jin scanned his surroundings once more, before reverting his gaze back to Kim. And we will be using the forest. I'll wish you luck. Well, you guys will be the ones needing that luck later on, though. Jin didn't mouth his inner thoughts, however. Sure thing, you two. With that, Jin's group headed towards the forest. After ensuring that the group had completely disappeared into the forest, Kim began guffawing out uncontrollably. What a bunch of idiots. Excuse me? Look over there. Kim uncrossed his arms and pointed towards some trees. Not just one or two either. Everywhere, I gave myself hiccups, good lord. Everywhere he pointed at, trees bore the scars that suspiciously looked like claw marks of potentially gigantic creatures. Isn't that? It's a bear. An ice bear? A bear-type monster, infamous among all the beast-type monsters as the most ferocious. Those claw marks were them marking their territory. The hunters in Kim's group saw those and clicked their tongues.
It'd be better if they stayed put here and waited till the end. Looks like innocent people will die because of a rank E taking the lead.
I mean, would that rank E have received any prior training like us?
Kim stared at the forest and chuckled derisively.
That's to be expected from a measly rankie.
Wait. Suddenly, Kim's smile disappeared. Most of that group is rank C's, and there's a rank B among them too, so how come? How come he thought Jin was that group's leader? Indeed, he hadn't felt that anything was amiss, right up until he realized this weird incongruency by himself. Still, Kim shook his head.
Well, it doesn't matter.
They were all going to die soon anyway. Worrying about themselves took precedence over what would happen to the weaklings who would last for long to begin with. There was nothing he could do about the dead, but well, shouldn't the ones that were supposed to live on? Kim turned towards the road and spoke up.
Let's depart.
Jin took the lead and walked up ahead. But before long, Huijin stood in front of him.
What is it?
Have you lost your mind?
Jin crossed his arms and displayed how unhappy he was to hear that, meaning she'd have to be careful with her follow-up. Perhaps she understood Jin's warning. Huijin's voice had softened somewhat.
I'm sorry, but I need to say this.
Huijin's finger pointed towards one of the surrounding trees.
Can you see that?
There was a huge claw mark on the tree's bark.
Over there too, and there.
Almost every single tree had their barks greatly damaged, and it was hard to find one that was still intact.
This entire place is full of the bear's territorial markings, you know. This entire forest is the bear-type monster's habitat.
Dogs or apes were weaker than tigers or lions. Such logic also applied to monsters as well. The tiger or lion-type monsters were much more difficult to fight against when compared to dog or ape-type monsters. So, what about a bear-type then? A bear, a polar bear no less, was seen as one of the strongest carnivorous land animals out there. And right now, Jin's group had entered a forest where monsters based on such animals were residing. Of course, Park Huijin would get angry.
We need to go back, right now, before the monsters show up.
Jin clicked his tongue.
What's this?
Huijin thought that Jin would show one of the three responses: get angry, get stunned, or accept what she told him. Unfortunately for her, her expectation was wide off the mark. She was the one advising him against the irrational and hasty decision here, yet it was Jin looking at her as if she was the idiot.
Why is he looking at me like that?
Huijin's face reddened up from anger.
But what is it?
Her voice rose up again. Jin spat out a long sigh and opened his mouth. It's difficult to find a tree without the territorial markings, which means that there are more than one or two ice bears here, yes?
That is why we must go back.
That is precisely why we're moving through the forest.
Eh?
Huijin's eyes went round in confusion. She still doesn't get it even with that massive hint. Jin had little choice but to tell it straight to her. When we're moving through the forest, we only have to worry about ice bears.
Ah,
Only then did Park Huijin understood Jin's intention. The meaning behind lots of ice bears were simple, that there were no other monsters strong enough to hunt ice bears in this forest. To be more precise, the group didn't have to worry about fighting monsters stronger than ice bears here.
why haven't I thought about that?
Huijin became ashamed after shouting at Jin just now. Her head dropped low, even the skin of her neck reddening up from embarrassment. Jin continued to click his tongue. The whole reason why a dungeon was a scary place was that no one knew what might pop out when you were inside. Well, you wouldn't be able to come up with a plan if you didn't know what kind of enemies were waiting for you there. However, didn't the enemies of this place graciously reveal themselves already? Bear-type monsters, is it? Jin didn't know how strong these ice bears were, but he was sure of them being weaker than those two white phantom archers. They were wearing clothing that looked to be made out of bear felt. That's why he had chosen the forest route. He was thinking of traversing the forest and increasing his level, and at the same time keep an eye out on Kim's group and the movements of the White Phantoms while waiting for his chance to act. That was the safest way available. Abruptly, Jin became rather puzzled by what he saw. Why is your face still so red? Hui Jin's face was far too red to be normal. She couldn't raise her head and managed to squeeze out a voice that was smaller than a buzzing mosquito.
It's because... too cold.
Jin spat out a long groan and summoned his store. He quickly browsed through the items for sale and spotted thick fur coats and shoes designed for winter.
Item: warm fur coat. Rarity none. Type miscellaneous. Warms up the wearer's body. Price 10 gold. Item: warm boots. Rarity none. Type miscellaneous. Once worn provides warmth to wearer's feet. Price 10 gold.
Fur coat and the shoes cost 10 gold each. Unlike items with added effects, regular items didn't cost a lot to buy. No, compared to the amount of gold in his possession, they were oh so cheap.
Remaining gold 431,930.
Still, I never had guessed that I'd have to buy Japtem with my gold. Jin chose buy for all of them. Since he couldn't just give them to some and ignore others, Jin spent 100 gold and bought the articles of clothing for all 5 people. Poof! 5 coats and 5 pairs of boots suddenly popped up in front of his eyes. And of course, the eyes of all 4 people, excluding Jin's, all grew super wide.
Huh? What the heck? Was that separate space magic?
Park Hui-jin was taken aback too, and she hurriedly raised her head to look at Jin. Not caring whether they were shocked or not, Jin spoke to them disinterestedly. Put them on. He finished speaking and reached down to grab the closest fur coat, but then Song Yi suddenly grasped his sleeve. When their gazes met, Song Yi asked him while looking rather scared and confused.
Ajusi? Just what's going on with you? You managed to catch that arrow and now you use some strange magic to take these clothes out, too.
Frowns formed on the forehead of Jin. It didn't take a genius to figure out that at this rate he'd be swarmed by the endless stream of questions and get irritated to no end. Right. Let's use this chance to clearly draw the line. Jin raised his head and spoke in a firm voice. Han Song-yi, I brought you here with me, so I will take full responsibility and protect you. However, Jin's voice became colder next. Don't ask me about anything. Jin then swept his gaze against Park Hui-jin as well as other hunters tagging along. The same goes for the rest of you. Do not ask me anything, and do not demand anything from me. He didn't stop there, though. If you don't like it, then you can just leave now. I won't stop you. The 2 male hunters originally didn't choose to follow Jin, but only tagged along because of the rank B Park Hui-jin. They alternated their gazes between the fur coats and Jin before hurriedly shaking their heads. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of chapter 60, and that is where I will draw this entire read to a close. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this wonderful session of the solo leveling novel, and I look forward to you the Monday after next, which will be on the 25th. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for watching. All my mods and members and everyone in between who tuned in. All I can say to you is, hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. And because I know you're coming back anyway. Have a fantastic day. And once again, as always, later, peoples.